If anybody's got the answers, it's Jocko. You got any answers?
Oh, I'm not quite so sure about that. I'm not sure how this movie ends.
This is the dumbest fucking movie ever. Do you know Magic the Gathering is now racist?
I don't even know what Magic the Gathering is.
It's some dorky game that nerds play.
Oh.
Sorry,
how
nerds.
is it? How is it racist?
I don't know. I was just I only saw the title of the article that they're trying to cancel Magic the Gathering. I'm like, oh Christ. I thought that's what you guys liked. I thought they liked Magic the Gathering.
I have no idea.
Everything's problematic. Everyone's getting canceled. It's amazing how many people did blackface.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's very strange. It's very strange. I mean, it was on primetime TV, right?
Yeah, a bunch of times. Yeah.
I mean, like in the modern world, primetime TV.
Jimmy Fallon was he's doing a Chris Rock impression, which, by the way, you used to be able to do. When I was in high school, my friends were Mr. T for Halloween. Nobody gave a fuck. Nobody was like, Jimmy, what's wrong with you? Everybody's like, oh, you're Mr. T for Halloween. It was never like a problem. It's a very strange thing, you know? Like you can do whiteface, no problem. Here it is. What is this? Magic the Gathering.
Invoke prejudice card. So that's
It's an enchantment card which restricts the caster's opponent to only using summons that match the skin color of their opposing creatures. Huh?
This is if you brought me on to talk about this, I should leave now. about Magic the Gathering. This is why I'm here, man. We're in a bad way.
It just shows how fucked up everything is.
There's a lot of thin skin out there right now, apparently.
I mean, it seems like a perfect storm. Like if you wanted to engineer the downfall of society, you would do it in several steps. You would have a reality show president where everybody's mad at him, and then all the liberals get their feathers in a ruffle and everybody gets real super uptight, and then there's this big divide between the left and the right that's kind of, manufactured. And then you'd have this disease.
Just lock everyone inside.
Yeah, unprecedented. Shut down the economy. Force people to not work. So if your business falls apart, you could be the most hardworking, diligent, disciplined person who's always at work an hour early, always has your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and you still go broke, and you're still fucked. And then you have this George Floyd thing. And then boom, it just ignites the powder keg.
The other thing that you have to wrap around all this is this social media, which is, I'm only going to post things that are just going to completely make everyone that sees whatever I'm posting emotional and filled with rage. Whether you're on the left or you're on the right, my goal is to enrage people. That's the goal. And then that just gets spun up over and over. So you're taking all these little incidents and you're multiplying them times thousands and thousands of views.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, mainstream media is the same thing, right? It's not like there's this huge difference between what the mainstream media shows and what social media. It's both emotional media, just trying to make people emotional, which is the worst possible thing. No one makes good decisions when they're emotional.
No.
I spent my adult life trying to train humans to not get emotional in pressure situations. Why? Because it's going to end up bad every single time. Every single time. And yet that's what our society is based on right now. But it's based on these emotional reactions.
Yeah, because of social media, I think, and because of things like YouTube and user-created content where anybody can kind of make videos, so many things are vying for folks' attention that mainstream media has resorted to clickbaity type shit. Whether it's New York Times articles, which used to be beyond reproach, that they've gone social justice warrior and clickbaity. And all these other websites are 100% clickbaity. That's the only way they can get people to pay attention. Like I saw like the dumbest fucking article. I couldn't believe how dumb it was. It was an article on Ozark. It's like, has Ozark been canceled? And I'm like, fuck, they canceled that show? That show's amazing. So then I click on the article. The entire article is about a guy who couldn't find season 1 on Ozark because there was a glitch, and then he found it. And so it's not. So the whole article was just bullshit.
Yeah.
But they got me. They get everybody.
They got you to click. They got their advertising dollars because they can show the engagement with the audience.
Exactly. Well, here's a good one. CNN showed a guy got shot yesterday in San Bernardino. Hispanic man got shot in San Bernardino. So that's the title. The title of the article is Hispanic Man Gets Gunned Down by the Police in San Bernardino. What they leave out is the guy had a gun and was shooting at the cops. So this guy's got a gun. There's photos of this gentleman with a gun, and there's a cop on his knees about to shoot the guy. The guy's standing in front of a gas station. There's gas pumps. I mean, maybe he felt like they wouldn't shoot at him because the gas tanks were right behind him. The pumps were right behind him. But why would they leave that out? Guy with gun in gunfight with cops dies is the right title, not Hispanic man gunned down by cops. Like, they're literally trying to incite anger and violence. They know that you read that and you say Hispanic man shot by cops, like, these motherfuckers, they're murderers. They won't stop. And they leave out this picture of this man with a gun pointing it.
You're looking at me like I'm going to say some kind of really profound answer. I got nothing for you.
I'm hoping you got
because you're exactly right. What do they set up that headline for? It's to outrage people.
Yes.
Anyone that actually opens it up and reads it would actually probably say something like, sounds like the cops did a good job on that one and killed a bad guy before he blew up a gas station and killed a bunch of innocent people. But that's obviously not that. I mean, think if you tried to write a headline the other way of how these heroic cops face man with gun, eliminate him before he can cause terror in this neighborhood. That would be a nice headline to read. But you're not going to see it.
You're not going to see that. Not today.
Because it's not going to drive enough people crazy.
Today, if your wife tweets "All lives matter," you can get fired. It doesn't even have to be you anymore.
Yeah.
All lives matter. Just imagine a time where saying "all lives matter" is so controversial that you could get fired.
Didn't that happen to a soccer player or something?
Yes, a soccer player's wife tweeted something like that.
Yeah.
The guy who runs the Kings, or the guy who's the commentator for the Kings, they fired him.
You know, and then this is, a lot of it is this, right? So people are feeling a certain way, and they're not like this girl that wrote "All Lives Matter." Do you think that was her clandestine way of showing that she's all about white pride? You know what I mean? No, she was thinking, hey, everyone matters. She's probably having some nice thoughts, you know? But then all of a sudden, no, this chick is evil, right, for doing this. And I think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of people I think most people are pretty sane. I think most people are pretty reasonable. I think, anybody looking at the George Floyd case is like, yeah, that's completely wrong. That's disgusting. It's horrible. It's heinous to watch. I haven't heard anyone say anything other than that. So how are we just getting so completely divided on this whole thing and start attacking each other just over absolutely everything?
That's a good point, because this is literally a case where no one is saying there's nothing wrong with what that cop did. No one. Zero people. Zero people. But yet everybody's still at each other's throats.
Zero people have stuck up for that guy in any way, shape, or form.
Even law enforcement. No law enforcement people saying, you got to understand, this is how you control a man. You got to lean on his neck for about 8 minutes, 45 seconds, 46 seconds. No one's saying that.
And unfortunately, you know what they're saying? They're saying defund the police.
Yeah.
They're saying no more chokeholds, right? Which
I think is
crazy.
Yeah.
If you want to get someone to be under control and you can't choke them, you know what you have to do? You have to hit them in the head with a baton 7 times. And you got to risk giving them brain damage, permanently injuring them. If people know what they're doing, I mean, obviously, if people know what they're doing, we'll put a choke on. They'll wake up. They'll be cuffed.
Yeah.
We're all good.
Yeah, obviously. But, it's the people that are doing it wrong is the problem. The people that shouldn't be doing it in the first place. It's untrained people. But if you're a cop and you're in a fight for your life and you can't use chokeholds, that's fucking crazy.
It's insane.
You're gonna get shot and killed, or somebody else is gonna get shot and killed. Someone's gonna take your gun.
Yeah, and the idea of defund the police, and I understand the premise, okay, and this is once again where many people that say defund the police, they don't mean, hey, just get rid of the police. Of course, there's a fraction of people that are saying defund the police means we don't want any more police anymore. There's a portion of people saying that. There's some people that are saying, well, if we defund the police, we can relocate some of that money and we can do, better schools and we can put money into the infrastructure inside these neighborhoods. But here's the problem. You know what the police need more than anything else? They need money for training. And the way the police departments are set up, they do the most ridiculously minuscule amount of training for what their job is. So, as you know, I was in the SEAL teams. We would train for 18 months. 18 months we would train to go on a 6-month deployment. Cops, they get like 2 hours or 4 hours of combatives training a year. A year. That's complete insanity.
Insanity.
It's complete insanity. The thing I've been saying is cops should train 1/5 of the time. 1/5 of the time you should be training, whether it's 2 hours a day, 4 times a week, or whether it's 1 day a week where you're going to go and you're going to go through scenarios. You're going to do combatives. You're going to work with simunition. You're going to do de-escalation drills. Because it's really hard. I mean, being a cop I think is the hardest job in the world. And by the way, they're not going to have to worry about defunding the police because no one's going to want to be a cop anymore. Who is going to be fired up to be a cop right now? Who's going to think, you know what? When I grow up, I want to be hated by by a massive portion of the country. I want to be viewed as someone that kills innocent people. The recruiting in cop for police is going to go down so hard. It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be ridiculous. And then who are you getting there? You're going to get people that are worse level people, worse level humans are going to show up to be cops. So the training piece, though, they should do very, very scenario-driven training, right? Where you come into a room, and this isn't like super expensive stuff either. You come into a room, there's a person there, they appear to be compliant. You learn how to talk to them. You very quickly learn that instead of yelling them out of the gate, you say, "Hey man, what's going on? Hey, what's your name? You know, what's going on? We got a call here. Is everything okay?" You just immediately de-escalate. Then you learn what to do when they don't respond the way you want them to respond. Then you learn what to do when they start to do something drastic. What's the best thing for you? And you play through these scenarios. It's just like jiu-jitsu in the fact that what makes jiu-jitsu good? What makes jiu-jitsu good is we can go hard against each other over and over again and not really get hurt, not really get killed. So you get really good at it. That's what you need to do in training for police. You need to go through these tough scenarios over and over again because you do get better at it. You do get better at it. You learn how to mentally detach and not get emotional and realize that there's other things that are happening. When you see the George Floyd case, a couple of the other cops, I think two of the other guys were complete rookies, right? They had been on the force for a very short period of time. No one in that group of 4, obviously you got the killer himself. He's actually conducting the act, but all the other guys are not paying attention. They're all emotional themselves. Hey, stay back. And they're probably watching him saying, why isn't that guy moving? And they're just caught up in it. Whereas if someone would have showed up on the scene or one of those guys had been through some good training in their life, they would have said, what's happening here? Hold on. My partner over there has been on this guy for 2 minutes. He's not moving anymore. I'm going to walk over and say, hey man, let me take over. I got this. Go over there, decompress. This takes training. You have to train people. And I saw this over and over again in the SEAL teams, training guys. You get a young kid that's coming through training for the first time and they go into a room and they're getting shot with simunition bullets, or there's someone yelling and screaming, or we'd put Arabic women coming walking out of rooms. We'd have people get blown up with wounds. We would do this to them over and over again. So they realize, okay, I just got to relax. I got to take a step back. I got to detach from this situation so I can process what's happening and I can make a good decision. Because as I said earlier, no one is making a good decision when they're panicked, when they're freaked out, when they're scared. As a jiu-jitsu guy, when someone puts hands on you, you're not actually scared, right? You're like, oh, okay, I know what to do here. If you don't know jiu-jitsu, if you've never had someone grab you before, or you haven't had someone grab you in 17 months or 14 months, no one's laid hands on you because you got a badge and a gun. So people, when you tell them to do something, 95% of the time they go, okay, yeah, I don't want to get in trouble. But then somebody grabs you. You're instantly, your emotions are spiked, your adrenaline spiked. And the only way to overcome that is through consistent training that happens on a regular basis. You can't just train somebody one time. It's like ring rust. You can't just train somebody one time and, oh, now I don't need to train anymore. No, you need to do continuous training. So that fact right there, if we want to help the police through these situations, we need to invest more money into them. We need to get them better training. We need to pull them out of the field to train and pull them out of the field to decompress. Because you ever done a ride along?
No.
Like whether you're doing a ride along, whether you're going into any situation where you're thinking you could be killed, and even if it's just a remote chance, but you're doing that all the time, and you're seeing on the news, you hear this, your buddy got shot, your buddy got whatever, this other guy got, take his gun taken away. Like that stuff happens. People get killed. I mean, there's been 31 cops killed this year. 31 cops killed this year. And a lot of those, that's not including, like a car accident or COVID. There's been a bunch died of COVID, but just people that have been engaged with bad guys and they got killed. So you're a cop. When another cop gets killed, you're thinking that could be you. So that's your mindset, and that mindset builds, and you're working 10-hour days, and you're working 12-hour days, and there's no training, and there's no breaks. Where do you end up, right? Where do you end up? You end up being a little bit paranoid. You end up being a little bit angry. What happens when you get in a fight with your wife? It's like all these things, you add them together. It's a freaking hard job. And from an entire systemic way of training and recruiting and keeping police ready to do their job, whatever that job entails. Because let's face it, most of the time that job entails, most of the time it entails, hey, I'm about to go have a bad relationship with another human being. That's what's about to happen, right? Whether I'm pulling you over, whether I've been called to your house because you were yelling and screaming and people heard your wife screaming or whatever. That's what's happening. I'm showing up in a bad relationship. You don't like me and I already don't like you. That's where we start. So we got to train people for that. We also got to train them for all the times that they go in to help people, save people. They're the first people on the scene at car accidents. People are bleeding out. We got to train them for that. And then they have to also be trained for, hey, this is a bad guy this is the guy that you just talked about at a gas station with a weapon that wants to kill a bunch of people. You got to be prepared for that whole spectrum as a police officer. And yet we send them to a 3-month-long police academy, and then we send them out in the street, and that's what they do, day in, day out, day in, day out.
It seems to me that they need to be vetted too, much better than they are now, just like the SEALs. Like, you can't get through buds unless you are a superior human being. You have to be able to tolerate a bunch of shit that most people are going to fall apart during. And this seems to me that this is a great way to weed out people that just don't have it.
Yeah, there's one thing that's interesting, just from a physical perspective, most police departments don't even have a minimum physical requirement to continue to be on the force. You have to be at a certain level to graduate from the academies, but oftentimes there's no standard beyond that.
Yeah, I've seen cops before that were like, this is hilarious. Like, what is going to stop someone from closing the distance on you? Like, you ain't getting to that gun.
Yep. But the mental aspect is stuff that you can get better at.
Yes.
You can get better at it, but you only get better at it through training.
Right.
And you only get really comfortable through training a lot. And yet we put these people in these horrible positions over and over and over again, and we don't give them the proper training.
And now there's these politicians that, because of the current social climate, they're encouraged to want to defund the police. That's a great way for them to get brownie points from their constituents. The people want the police defunded, which is it's the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life. It's so crazy that this is actually gaining steam to the point where in Minneapolis, because they're trying to quiet down the mob, they've actually gone ahead and done it. What the fuck is Minneapolis going to look like in a year from now? It's going to look like Mad Max. I mean, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be, criminals will go there to commit crimes. If there's no police there, are you crazy?
By the way, this Jocko energy drink is the shit. It's very legit.
Right on.
I like it. Yeah, I just don't understand where they think this game ends, and I don't think they've planned it out. They're not playing chess.
The other thing that you're talking about, this brownie points for the politicians, and there's brownie points and there's people trying to create sides. It's my side versus your side, and that's a completely political thing, right? And all that does is increase the divide between the police and the civilians. And this reminds me a lot of a counterinsurgency, right? So counterinsurgency, the insurgents are, bad guys inside of a country. The country's not bad. There's some bad guys in a country. So what you have to do is you actually have to go out and build relationships with the good people inside that country so that the good people inside that country can help you get rid of the bad people. What happens if you go out, and this is Ramadi, Iraq. This is my last deployment to Iraq. There's a bunch of just totally normal, good people, Iraqi people that are living in the city of Ramadi. What do they want to do? You know what they want to do? They want to send their kids to school. They want to run their little market. They want to do whatever it is that they do. That's what they want to do. They have the same goal as a normal family. They're just a normal bunch of people. And inside that group of people, there's a bunch of bad people. And these are insurgents. Some of them are foreign fighters. Some of them are foreign regime elements from Saddam, but they're bad. And they want to create chaos and mayhem. So Americans, we go in there. If we go in there super heavy-handed, and while I go to capture or kill one bad guy, I kill or maim a couple of those normal civilians, what happens? Well, a couple of those normal civilians' family go, wait, you guys aren't good. You guys are bad. You guys just killed my brother and he didn't do anything wrong. And then we do it again. And then we do it again. And then we do it again. And each time that we do this, we're creating more animosity from the local populace, who, by the way, like I said, they're just good, normal people. So what we had to do is really focus on going out and building relationships with the local populace. How do we do that? And one of the things, this happened after I left, but you remember the surge that took place, and they sent a bunch more troops over there. Part of the reason that they sent that surge and part of the reason that that was allowed to happen was because the Battle of Ramadi, where I fought, went very well. And since it went well, people said, well, maybe we can pull this off. So they sent more troops. And one of the directives that General Petraeus gave is he said there can be no more drive-by counterinsurgency. And what he meant by that was when you go to a neighborhood, you can't just drive through the neighborhood in your Humvee, in your bulletproof Humvee with your windows up, drive through, show of force, and then leave. That doesn't work. What you have to do is stop your vehicles. You have to get out. You have to talk to the local populace. You have to ask them what's going on. You have to ask them if they need anything. You have to build relationships with the local populace, the good local populace that just wants those insurgents out of there. And that's what I don't see happening. And the more we increase this divide between the police and the civilians, the worse that's going to get. And so the police have to start doing a better job of outreach of, hey, I asked you if you did a ride-along. They should be offering ride-alongs all the time to the local kids, 17-year-old kids, 15-year-old kids. Hey, come and see what my job is like. Come and help me out. That 15-year-old kid, he knows who the bad actors are. He knows who the good kids are. Bring that kid along on a ride along. Let him see what it looks like from your angle. Get out, meet the parents, meet the families. We're failing to build relationships between the police and the civilians, and that causes that causes these problems.
I think you're 100% correct, but I don't hear anybody repeating what you're saying. That's what's terrifying to me. I think everything you're saying is logical. It makes sense. It comes from experience. I don't hear anybody saying this.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's because people just don't recognize what's happening because they're too in it, right? They're too in it. They're wrapped up in it, and that's another part. I talked about recruiting. Who are you recruiting? Recruit those kids. Recruit those kids, but you have to build a relationship with them before anyone's going to go into the police. And look, I think it's the LA Police Department. If you look at the LA Police Department compared to the racial makeup of LA, they're pretty equivalent, and they're pretty equivalent on purpose. They do that for a reason. So you got to get that. You got to continue to build those relationships so that we talk to one another. We actually communicate with each other, because anytime, I'm allowed to sit over here in my area and you're sitting over there in your area, we're building animosity. We build that kind of animosity between each other. And now the littlest thing. I mean, there was a woman that was killed in Minneapolis like 2-3 years ago. Do you remember this one?
Yes.
Female,
Yes.
like a yoga instructor, called the police. The police called the police to report a disturbance. The police showed up, and there's no video, no footage. She gets killed by the cops. It's insane that these things happen. But we also have to remember like I said, what is a police officer thinking about? And what kind of training have we given them? And what kind of psychological screening, to your point, what kind of strike? And it's not just one-time psychological screening, because guess what? People get burnt out, and it happens at different times to different people. You take 35 guys in combat. I've got some guys at the end of a 6-month deployment, you know what they're telling me? Can I stay longer? I'm doing fine. You get 1 month into that deployment, and you've got other guys that are saying, hey, do you need anyone to head home early? Right? That happens. So you think in a police force of 1,000 people or whatever size your police force is, you're going to have some people that are steady, mentally stable. They can deal with it. They can be in an officer-involved shooting today, and tomorrow they can go back to their job and be perfectly fine. There's other people, they could never work again after they're in an officer-involved shooting. What kind of investment are we making into this psychological health of police? And look, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm sitting here just putting it all on the police, because everyone is playing a role in this. And one of the things that you need to look at as well is how to get arrested, right? There should be a public service course on how you should get arrested. This is what you should do. If the cops are pulling you over, if the cops approach you about something, here's what you should think. One of the things you should think is, okay, this cop may not be bad. This cop may be looking out for my welfare right now. That's a great, hopeful thought. The other thing that you have to think is kind of worst case scenario. This cop might be agitated. This cop might be looking for somebody that fits my description. This cop might have just been in a fight with his wife. He might have just lost a partner. There's a million bad things. Use that scenario in your head. Use that scenario in your head to contemplate how you're going to interact with a police officer, which is, you know what they're looking at? They're looking at your hands. You know why? Because that's where the threat comes from. The threat comes from your hands. So when you're making quick movement with your hands, don't do that. Listen to what they say. Move slowly when you move. This should be public service. The police should be putting out, hey, if you interact with the police, we hate to have to say this, but since our police sometimes are in bad situations, here's some things we recommend and we highly suggest and we beg. We beg that you do this. We beg, because what happens to these cops when they kill somebody? What happens to them? Their lives are totally destroyed.
Well, that was the thing about that guy in Minneapolis. He'd already killed people. He'd already been involved in, I think it's at least 2 shootings, and he had more than a dozen complaints against him.
Yeah.
Not good.
Not good.
It's obvious by the end result.
Yeah.
That's the type of guy he was. It's pretty obvious by the fact that he was able to do that to a man. The guy's literally calling out to his dead mother. You know, I mean, the type of man that can stay on someone's neck while they're doing that when all that guy did was have a counterfeit $20 bill. That's it.
This is where, when you talk about psychological screening, and that's why I'm saying it has to be constant.
Yeah.
Because people change, right? And red flags. I mean, like you said, hindsight's 20/20. We're looking at this case now. We're going, oh, who the hell lets this guy continue to police? And by the way, interestingly enough, if you talk to internal affairs at police departments, the vast majority of the complaints that they get about police are from police. So they report each other. That's a little known fact. Most of the reports don't come from the civilians out there saying, hey, this happened or that happened. Most of the time it's cops saying, hey, this guy was out of line here.
Well, that's a good sign. It doesn't look rosy. When I'm looking at the future, I don't see a way during this climate.
Well, what scares me the most is I don't see a way if we don't talk to each other. That's where there's no solution. Because, you know, look, for every 10 viral video that you see of a cop hitting somebody with a baton or a rioter throwing something through a window, for every 10 of those viral videos, there's another viral video that has You know, the guy with the free hugs t-shirt on that's out talking to the cops and saying, hey, you know, I get it. And they're communicating with each other and talking. And when you communicate with people, it's just like the hostage rescue basic technique. You want to humanize. You want to humanize instead of dehumanize. And right now, we're just dehumanizing each other completely. And that's what scares me more than anything else, is if we can't talk to each other. Because, look, you take the most hardened soldier in war. Some badass soldier that's done 4 deployments, 6 deployments, whatever, and you put him into a room with a kid and a mom, an Iraqi kid and a mom, or an Afghan kid and a mom, and you put him in that room and say, hey, sit here for 15 minutes and find out what they're about. Here's an interpreter. That guy's going to come out of there going, yeah, I get where they're coming from. And same thing, vice versa. You take a hardened jihadist and you say, hey, talk to this guy over here about what he's trying to do inside your country. Just talk to him. When you open up the communications, and are you going to get some extremists on both ends? Yes, you will. So maybe I shouldn't have said the most hardened soldier and the most hardened, because you know what, the most hardened soldier becomes a killer. That happens. It happens all the time. You know, I shouldn't say it happens all the time. It happens from time to time. That's how you get the My Lai massacre. It happens. The most hardened jihadists, they're not going to change their mind. They're not going to come to any rose-colored view of America. But barring those total extremes, you've got people. You've got other human beings. And if you can get them to talk to each other, they can find consensus. They can find common ground. But if they're not talking to each other, then we don't make any progress. And to your whole kind of point about what's happening right now, there's less and less communication between people, open communication. Because if you talk to someone and they say, the cops did this, this, and this, and you say, oh, okay, explain to me what happened. Tell me what went down. And then you say, hey, let me tell you what it's like for a cop, being a cop, when he sees that, when he sees something going on. You know how many domestic violence cases happen and the person shows up and they're getting assaulted by both parties? Mm-hmm. So maybe that's what this cop was thinking when he showed up and saw your mom in this situation and did this to your dad. Right? Like, this is real conversations, but we don't have them. And not only we don't have them, it seems like there's forces that are actively trying to prevent us from talking to each other, from sitting down at a table and saying, hey man, tell me what's going on.
What forces?
Who wants the country to be divided? It's the people that you're talking about earlier, that how do they score points? How do I score points with this group? How do I score points with the other group? It's by making everything as divisive as possible. It's horrible to watch, man. It's sickening to watch.
I was reading a whole series of tweets where there's a journalist that was talking about how cops shooting black men is a real problem, but another real problem that's not being discussed by this Black Lives Matter group is black on black crime. And how do we stop all the murders that are taking place in Chicago? And this is something that should be discussed. And this guy was getting attacked. And another journalist was literally tweeting at him saying, "You have been told not to discuss this." But yet he ignores these commands that he should not discuss. This is a very real issue. As if somehow or another bringing up another issue that is also a problem diminishes the original issue of this guy getting killed by cops, which of course it doesn't.
Yeah.
But the idea is that there's problems, there's real problems, and it's not just the cops killing these people. Look, the cop killed this guy in Minneapolis. He didn't do anything in Seattle. How the fuck did that shit happen in Seattle? Well, it happened in Seattle because of this reactionary world where one person does something somewhere, it gets through social media, it gets through the mainstream media, it becomes this huge inflammatory subject. And then the next thing you know, windows are getting smashed, things are getting lit on fire, cars are getting turned over, blocks are getting taken, and that's where we find ourselves.
I think it was May 29th. There was a cop killed, I want to say in Texas. and he was killed when they rolled onto a scene. They got a call, hey, suspicious person running through the neighborhood. They roll up on the scene. They start, a few cops are now searching for this guy, and they see a building with an open door. They go, okay, maybe he's in there. Let's go clear this building with an open door. They go in this building with an open door. There's shots fired. One of the cops killed one of the other cops. So just, friendly fire, death. That right there, if you take that and you just extrapolate that over how hard it is to be a police officer, that you can be going into a building and you shoot one of your friends because you think they're bad. That is a real problem. That's how hard this job is. My point is that's how hard this job is. But we have to do a better job of explaining that. We have to do a better job of explaining how hard this job is. As far as the, hey, don't talk about black on black violence. I was talking with my podcast bro, Echo Charles, who's a black guy. And we were talking about that. And I said, I think it might have a little bit to do with this. If you're watching UFC and there's two guys that are fighting and the round ends, like just at the end of the round, all of a sudden the referee comes in and like punches one of the, just Muay Thai kicks a guy in the head and knocks him out. Everyone would be completely, utterly outraged about this, right? Because
Of course.
that guy wasn't in the game. What's that guy doing?
Right.
So I think there's a little bit of that. That's the referee is supposed to not do that. Mm-hmm. And when you see a cop, the thought is, hey, that guy's viewed as a referee. That guy's not supposed to be doing this. So I think that is kind of where some of that outrage comes from, because this is a cop. This isn't supposed to be happening here. This guy is not supposed to be killing people.
Right.
And he did.
There's also that the cop is just a person who has this extraordinary power.
Yes.
And extraordinary responsibility, too.
Right.
What's terrifying to me is that when I'm looking at this idea to defund the police, and then I'm thinking, like, what do these neighborhoods look like if you wind up doing that? And then how do you get back out of that? What do you do? Refund the police? Do you ramp it up and do it better next time? I mean, this is a long process. You're looking at a lot of trial and error here over, perhaps multiple years before they figure out what they fucked up.
Yeah, and I know there's some city, I think it's in New Jersey, that
Camden.
Yes, that completely dismantled their police, but then they rebuilt a new police department. And I actually get that. Like, you could get a department that was so completely and utterly corrupt that you said, you know what, we're getting rid of all of them. And
did you ever see Cocaine Cowboys?
No.
Great documentary. But one of the things it talks about is the corruption during the cocaine era of the 80s, where the entire graduating police force, from the police academy, the entire graduating year, everyone was either murdered or went to jail for corruption. Everyone. The entire graduating class. That's how bad it was.
Yeah. So if you have that kind of problem,
you might want to dismantle that.
You might want to dismantle that police force. You know what happens in the SEAL team sometimes? Sometimes there's a platoon that's so bad that they just dismantle the whole platoon.
How often does that happen?
Very rarely, but it does happen.
Really?
Yep.
And what causes something like that?
Usually the problem is bad leadership. Mm-hmm. It's always bad leadership, because you can take a bunch of knuckleheads and you give them a good leader and they'll do fine. So it's always comes down to the leadership. So sometimes they'll replace a leader, but and usually when they replace a leader, you'll watch the platoon will turn around almost instantly, because someone steps in and says, all right, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. And they make that change. But sometimes you have just like a bad platoon and they say, you know what? You guys are done.
It seems incredibly difficult to be a good leader. One of the more interesting things about what you're doing with your platform, whether it's your podcast or the Instagram videos that you put out, you're showing what good leadership is. There's not a lot of people, when you look at, if you get 1,000 people, how many of those people are going to be a real good leader?
Well, this is what's this is what has become my career after the SEAL teams, because I got very, very lucky in the SEAL teams. Very, very lucky. First of all, my whole career was just luck. I was the luckiest guy ever in the SEAL teams. And I happened to be in the right places at the right times, and I got some great experience in some very tough situations. And then the last thing that I did in the SEAL teams for almost the last 3 years I was in was I ran the training, the tactical training, not the training where guys carry boats on their head and carry logs around. I didn't do that. I went through it, but I didn't run that training. I ran the training where everything I was talking about, you're running scenarios, you're putting people in bad situations, you're using simunition, you're doing all these things. So I got to see over and over again leaders get put into pressure situations and how their leaders responded and how the team responds to that leader and what these different things wash out, how they wash out. And what's interesting is, and what I really realized when I was in that position, is that their leadership is a skill and you can get better at it. Now, just like fighting, just like jiu-jitsu, there's certain people that have a natural propensity to be good at it. You got some, let's say someone's really strong, right? They're going to have an advantage. Let's say someone's super flexible. They're going to have a little advantage. Let's say someone has, they're big, right? These things are advantages in fighting. In leadership, it's the same thing. Let's say someone is super articulate. That's helpful. Let's say someone doesn't have a bad temper. That's very helpful. But everyone is at a different level. Well, just like you can take a bunch of different sized and shaped and athletic ability people and you can make them better at fighting, you can take a bunch of people with different levels of leadership characteristics and you can improve them. And then there are actual moves. There's actual moves that you can do as a leader that are just like a jiu-jitsu move. Oh, Joe comes to me and he's yelling and screaming at me that I didn't give him 2 extra people to go on his job. Instead of me going, hey, Joe, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Instead, I actually listen to you. Right? I listen to you say, well, hold on. I didn't know you needed that many people. What do you need them for? So I show a little sense of urgency. I kind of reflect what your emotions are. So I'm not just creating a fight between you and me. Because if you and I are fighting, you and I are not finding a solution. So I'm going to reflect a little bit of your emotion and then I'm going to diminish it a little bit so you and I can have a real conversation. So there's moves that you can do as a leader that function like a jiu-jitsu move. And they're very, very powerful. And the more of them you learn, the better off you'll be. And you need to practice them. You won't be good at them out of the gate. It's going to take some, just like if I showed you an arm lock and you've never done jiu-jitsu before, you're not going to be able to just get on the mat and do it to somebody. You're going to have to try it a couple times. You're going to have to learn the little nuances to the move. So there are ways that leaders can get better. And yes, there's absolutely natural leadership qualities that make people just a natural, better leader. But even those people can improve. So your question of out of 1,000 people, how many really good leaders there are? Well, you have to ask, okay, you just talking about how many people are just naturally born great leaders. Your suspicion is correct. It's not a huge amount. But how many of those leaders can you improve exponentially in their ability to lead? And that's what, I have a company, Echelon Front. That's what we do all the time is we go and work with companies. We work with leaders. That is exactly what we do. And we take companies we work with companies that have 150,000 employees, and you start getting everyone, all the leaders aligned and getting the frontline troops understanding where the leadership is and what they're thinking. And so you can become a much, much better leader over time. Now, how much of this do we see in the civilian sector? How much even more directly, how much of this do we see in the political world? The answer is an unbelievably small amount. I mean, it's a ridiculously small amount.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculously small amount. Why is that? I bet there's a lot of reasons. First of all, who at this point in the world thinks that sounds like a great job? Right? Hey, I'm going to go get attacked from all sides. I'm going to have my personal life picked apart. I'm going to I'm going to work really hard and really I'm going to have a pay cap on how much money I make. There's all kinds of reasons why becoming a politician doesn't look like the best job for most people that would look and say, hey, would I rather be the CEO of a company and make a ton of money and create a huge product and leave a big impact and influence thousands of people that work at my company in a positive way? Or would I rather go and get ridiculed and get broke down and have to try and get my job again in 4 years or 2 years or whatever the case may be? That's a tough job too. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm not going to, why would I jump into that game? Well, I know I say that. Why would I jump into that game? Why would I want to go and be a politician right now? Right? It's crazy. Like for me to want to go into the political world, there would have to be complete and utter chaos in America. I mean, way beyond where we're at right now.
Have you thought about this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you what I think. Because people ask me, oh, you should do this, you should do that. I say, we're not at a point where we need this.
We might be about 4 days away from it.
We could be. I think the answer, let's get Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
I agree with you.
He's the guy that could really, I think, unify people. And I think he would have to run as an independent. And I recommend he does it right now. Right now. He should be like, yeah, you know what? I'm in.
I think he would win.
I think he would win.
I really think he would win as an independent.
He's obviously a smart guy. He's super articulate. He listens. You can tell that he listens. I mean, when you see him interact with people, he's very genuine how he interacts. He's built businesses, right? He's built big, really productive businesses that are doing great. I think he'd be great.
He's got a fantastic work ethic.
He got a fantastic work ethic that he came up from nothing, right? He had $7 in his pocket. We all know the story. And he has more bucks in his pocket than that now. So, and most important, I think he's just a popular guy. He would get up and when the country's going through hard times, I was talking to a friend on the way up here and they were saying, hey, people want leadership and they're looking for it and they're not hearing it. And a lot of times people don't even recognize the fact that they don't have leadership. You don't even recognize it. It's a leadership vacuum. So they don't even know what they should be thinking. Let me give you an example. Let's take a SEAL platoon. SEAL platoon raids a house. There's some explosions. There's some gunfire. And no one's really sure where it's coming from. And no one's really sure what to do. Now that individual, a lot of the individuals in that platoon are just kind of holding on security. They're not really sure what to do. And they're not really even recognizing that there's a leadership vacuum. But then someone comes in, the leader, the platoon chief, the platoon commander comes in and goes, everyone get to the roof right now. And everyone goes, oh, cool. Now we know what to do. So same thing happening in America right now. There's no kind of voice saying, hey, everyone, this is what I just saw on this video. This is what I just saw. This was a heinous crime. This obviously, we have some deep-rooted problems that we need to fix. Here's the way I'm going to move forward, addressing these problems, getting to the bottom of them, and here's how long the timeline is going to be. And by the way, my ears are open, and you know where I'm coming right now? I'll be in Minneapolis tomorrow afternoon. That's, oh, we got a problem like that? If we have a problem like that, I am going on the ground. I will be there. I'll be there. I'm the president. So I'll be there in 2 hours. I'll be there on the ground. I'm going to find out what's going on. I'm going to meet with people. We're going to talk. I'm going to listen. I'm going to find out what this means. I'm going to get to the bottom of these problems. That's what, then you can actually speak from a position of, okay, I just spoke to these 9 people. Matter of fact, they're coming with me. We're going to come up with a plan. We're going to come up with a plan together. That's another huge leadership. Everyone thinks in the military that the leader's sitting at the top going, all right, gentlemen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to approach this building from the west. We're going to assault the front door. No, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it should work. The way it should work is I say to you, Joe, hey, Joe, here's the target I want you to go after tonight. Come up with a plan. And you say, okay, cool. And then if you're a good leader, you get with your team and say, hey, guys, here's the target we're going after. How do you all think we should do it? And now you all come up with your own plan together. And then you come back to me and say, hey, Jocko, here's how I want to do it. And I said, looks good. And maybe if I got to make a little adjustment, I say, hey, make this little adjustment here, or maybe use this weapon over here, or whatever. I make little tiny adjustments, but it's still your plan. And from a leadership perspective, that means you and your team are totally bought into the plan. You made it up. As opposed to me coming down and barking orders at you and telling you how we're going to do it. Doesn't work. I mean, I can force you to do it because I outrank you. No, I order you to do this. That doesn't fly. You know how many times in my entire military career I said, hey, I'm the boss. You better do what I tell you to do? You want to know how many times I said that? 0. 0 times. No one thinks like that. So in a leadership position, what you have to do is say, hey, I'm going to find out what's going on. I'm going to talk to people, and we're going to put together a plan to figure out how we're going to get this solved. This is not acceptable in America.
That sounds fantastic, but what if you're a Republican and they're Democrats, and then you get on the ground and you have a mayor that's non-compliant, you have a governor that disagrees with your strategy, they don't want you there in the first place, they want to work it out themselves, they want to defund the police, they're voting unanimously to defund the police, they don't like what you're saying.
Cool. Well, okay, if that's where we're at right now, let's come up with a plan. Let's see how we get through this. Here's some things I'm worried about. Because if you're telling me you want to defund the police because you think that this police department is completely and utterly corrupt, okay, let's explore that. Because you could be right. You could be right. This is where a lot of leaders make a mistake where it becomes an ego thing. Especially like you're talking Republican and Democrat. So that means if I'm a Republican, no Democrat can have a good idea ever. And if I'm a Democrat, no Republican can have a good idea ever. Exactly. That's completely wrong. That's completely wrong. So even right now, like when you threaten me right now, you're like, hey, what if I tell you I want to defund the police and I tell you I don't want the cops and you tell me all those things? As a good leader, you know what I'm going to say? All right, there must be something really bad going on here beyond even what I just saw on this video. I'm coming and I want to hear what's happening and I want you to tell me what your suggestions are. And if your suggestions are to defund the police, let's explore where that plays out. Let's see where that ends up. Because as we start peeling back the layers, even the most ardent anti-police person, you're going to get to a point where you say, okay, when one of your constituents' house is being broken into, who are they going to call? What mechanism are we going to put in place for security? How are we going to keep people safe from crime? And then they've got to answer that question. And maybe they come up with a good answer. I don't know yet. But as a leader, you have to listen to other people's ideas. And you absolutely have to do that. There's a saying from Patton: the leader on the front line is always right. The leader on the front line is always right. So I've always tried to embrace that theory, not just from a leadership perspective, but even from a human perspective. You know, when you want to tell me something that I don't know about, I'm going to listen to you. I'm actually really going to listen to you. I'm going to try and ask myself, well, let's see, Joe lives in this city and Joe's here with this community and Joe is telling me right now that we should have no police here. Well, could he be very emotional? Yes, he could. Does that mean I should not listen to anything he says? No, it doesn't. It means I should monitor your emotions and I should take that into account. But I should also be saying there's got to be some core of truth to what he's saying. Now, is it possible that Joe's just a bad actor and just evil? Yes, it is. How do I know that unless I listen to you? Their answer is you don't.
You know what I'm hearing right now? Jocko and the Rock 2020. That's what I'm hearing. Come on, son.
I think.
America needs you.
Yeah, well, I really hope it doesn't get to that
what
point.
You're saying all makes fantastic sense, but the problem is everybody is so partisan. It's so difficult to get people to work together, and people are they've so much invested in keeping this party divided by these party lines, keeping the country divided by the right and the left. It's so nuts.
It's completely nuts.
Yeah.
It's completely nuts. And when you hear the extremists on either side, you should say to yourself, they want us to fight, right? It's like,
yes.
You know, here, I'll drop dime on myself. I'm a big, like when I was a kid in the SEAL teams, I was an instigator. If I could talk smack to two different people and let them start to get escalating like they wanted to fight, I would do that all day long. Especially once I started training people jiu-jitsu, you know, I'd be the guy that was saying, "Oh, he thinks he could take you now because he trained for 2 weeks. You haven't been here." And he'd be, "What do you? He said that?" You know, I would do that all day long. Escalate. So we have to.
Why did you do that?
Because it's fun to watch people fight to the death.
That's what I did when I was on Fear Factor. I was always instigating people. It's fun.
Yeah, there's some level of fun to it.
Yeah, but fighting to the death there's a different kind of fun.
Yeah, but when you recognize that when people on the extremes are telling you extreme things, that what they want is to create a divide.
Yeah.
That's what they want. So that you just go, you know what? I just can't have that, so I'm voting here. Or I just can't have this, so I'm voting here. It's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare, and it's a very difficult one to get out of. You need real leadership to get out of it.
Yep.
And that's just absent right now on both sides.
Totally absent, and there's no middle ground. No, there's no one that says, well, I like some of Trump's policies, right? Someone says that, it's like, oh, just destroy that person.
You must be a Nazi.
Yeah. Or, I agree with Nancy Pelosi on this thing. You must be, a communist. Either way, but that's where we're at.
Yeah.
That's why, unfortunately, fortunately, but if The Rock was going to run, I think he would have to run as an independent.
Right.
To just say, listen, I'm not down. There's some things I agree with over there. There's some things I agree with over there. So you know what I'm doing? I'm going in the middle, which is where most of America is. So if you want to vote extremist, you can go to this side. Other extreme, you can go to this side. Everyone else vote for me.
When was the last time someone even won as a governor that was an independent? Was it Jesse Ventura?
Possibly.
Minnesota.
Yeah, possibly.
Might have been him. I mean, you never even hear about it.
Yeah, well, there's a whole money thing that happens, right? There's a whole money thing where if you're not a Republican or a Democrat, you're not going to get those big coffers full of money to put paid advertising out and get people in the streets to vote for you.
Yeah, you don't have the machine behind you. You don't have the DNC behind you or the Republican Party. Yeah, it's a real weird situation we find ourselves in with no clear path to sanity.
No, there's no clear path to sanity if we don't talk to each other. And right now, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not. I've seen, the people are so just angry. Just angry when you talk to them about this stuff. Just anger comes out. It's horrible. It's horrible to watch.
Yeah. What disturbs me is that I don't see, I mean, in the past when there's been disputes or things have been wrong, it seems like there's a clear path to sort of work things out. It doesn't seem like a clear path. It seems like every day it kind of gets a little worse. Like people get ramped up even more. And then there's this event that's looming on the horizon, this November event, this election event. And no matter what, whether it's left or right, whether Biden wins or Trump wins, there's going to be madness and chaos.
It seems hard for me to understand that Biden could maintain his health, through a presidency. That seems very challenging to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like he's been going down, with his coherence level. You can kind of see it over even months, right?
Yeah.
He's on a really, really rapid downward spiral.
Well, it seems stressful for anybody, except Trump, for whatever fucking reason. That guy eats it up. But for most people running for president alone, just the grueling, just the schedule that's involved and traveling and doing all these speeches, and it just breaks them down. I mean, one of the reasons why Hillary lost was she just wasn't willing to travel as much. There was all these different events that she was supposed to go to. She just couldn't go. She couldn't take it anymore. She thought she was going to win anyway, so she just laid back.
Yeah. It definitely is a brutal thing, but it's really also just completely insane that the two candidates are these two people.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Well, first of all, the best the Democrats could do. I mean, they had all these other people that were well-spoken.
Yeah.
He seemed like young and healthy, and there's so many.
That is hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
Right?
Extremely.
It's really hard to comprehend that.
Yeah.
That you're looking at this group of whatever, we got 350 million people, 320 million people in America, and this is who you end up with.
Yeah, I mean, fucking anybody but Biden. Anybody. I mean, we don't even know who his vice president is, right? That's going to make a big deal. That's going to be a big difference because the vice president is compelling and interesting, and he says he's going to pick a woman. Whether he picks the problem, if he was going to pick Klobuchar, but Klobuchar was responsible for a lot of those guys skating in Minneapolis. So, that's not good. And then if he's going to go with Kamala Harris, Tulsi Gabbard kind of took the legs off of that lady.
Yeah.
So then who's left? Mayor Pete? He seems like a guy who's just, like he's got a playbook. He's kind of like following this Obama playbook, and I just don't feel it from him at all. At least he's gay. We'd have a gay guy in office. That'd lighten people up a little bit. I believe that. We had a powerful gay leader. I think it'd be great for the country. Like, I think, one of the things about Obama being in office, beside the fact that he's very articulate and educated and just a well-spoken statesman, is that it's like, hey, look, we're making progress. We have a black president. Like, I felt that. I felt like a wave across the country. People like, you can be president in this country. Like, even if you're born out of a single mother family, and you're a black guy, you as long as you got the goods, you can make it. Like, this is great. This means we really are living in a meritocracy. And it would be great if there was a gay guy that had the same experience. Like all the people that are homophobes, like, yeah, but that fucking Mayor Pete, he's got me. I'm not. The Bible says, but you know what? Fuck the Bible. I'm voting for that guy. He's better than Trump. I mean, that would be great. But he's just. I don't think he's the guy. Maybe he's the guy someday, but he's also a young guy, right? So who else? Who the fuck is there? Especially since it's going to be Biden, and he said it's going to be a woman. He's definitely not going to go with Tulsi. She's too fucking dangerous. Yeah. The Democrats are scared of her. She doesn't play games.
Which is so crazy.
I know. She's got everything. Everything they want. Woman of color, congresswoman, served overseas, 2 deployments. Yeah. She's got everything.
She's really, super articulate.
Super articulate.
She's level-headed.
Super level-headed. Very intelligent.
Yeah.
But she's just not corrupt. She's got this one problem. That's the one problem. I mean, other than that, you look at it like, Jesus Christ, this lady, she's willing to talk to people on the other side. She's a stateswoman. She's the way she speaks like a leader. Mm-hmm. They won't even consider her. She's too dangerous.
Well,
so who else is there?
I'm going back to DJ, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Going back to him.
Independent.
Yeah, as an independent.
Yeah.
And
Dwayne and Jocko, 2020. Come on, man. We need you.
It's very, very, it's very horrible. And when I see all this divide, right, this is one thing that just, to have been in the military and to have been on the battlefield and fought alongside guys of every background that you can imagine, white, black, Mexican, whatever, Puerto Rican, Asian, everyone's out there. Everyone's out there. And by the way, going to memorial services for these guys overseas, there's not one thought in your head. There's not one thought in your head that's thinking, oh, underneath the flag on that coffin, is that a black guy or is that a white guy? Not one thought in your head is thinking that in any way, shape, or form. All you know is that person took a bullet, got blown up. That could be me. They took that for me. And to come back here and now see this country being ripped apart, that's the most horrible thing for me.
This is something that gets discussed a lot by guys in teams and by different guys in the military, period, that when you've served overseas with these guys, that racism becomes the least considered thing. It's your brothers, because you're literally, the consequences of your actions, the consequences of your day-to-day existence is so dire, life and death. It's the most drastic consequences that we are aware of. There's nothing, you're losing your life, or you're not, or they save you or they don't. You're brothers, you're all together. But in this world, the consequences are less grave, and the requirements of people are less extreme. You're not as tested. Your character is not as exposed. You're not as vulnerable in that sense. And because of that, I think people are more outraged, and they're finding more reasons why we're separate, more reasons to divide us, more reasons why they're different from us, whether it's because of ideology or skin color. You know, Sam Harris has a podcast where he's discussing all the different things, and he brings up one really great point, the podcast that's out now. He said, could you imagine a world where we think of color the same way we think of hair color? Like the color of people's skin's the same way. Could you imagine a world where I don't trust redheads? You know, those people with dark brown hair are fucking creepy to me. You know, all the people in my neighborhood that are blonde, they're all shady. Like, that seems so preposterous. Well, one day, the goal would be so great if one day that's how we feel about all skin color, that it's no different than hair color. It's just characteristics that you were born with that you have no control over. Who you are is what's important. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that's the position that the military puts you in. It puts you in this position of, look, I got to rely on this guy. I got to rely on this guy. And if they're reliable, I'm down. I'm good. If they're not reliable, I got a problem. And it doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter any of that. It's like, is this person going to be there? Is this a good person that's going to be there to back me up? And that's all we care about. And so for me, this is like super regressive to be going through this, to watch the country go through this and think, wasn't I just 10 years ago, like overseas with a bunch of guys and we didn't care about any of this? Didn't enter into our minds. We're not looking at it all the time. And I guess part of it is because you're in a fight. You're in a struggle. And right now, let's face it, in America, there's not a lot of struggling happening. Right?
Well, we're kind of making our own struggle right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you've talked about that's very important is that a lot of this divide is because of this really shitty way of communicating, whether it's through social media or whether it's through reading stories or watching videos. It's a terrible way to not just get information, but it's a terrible way to interact with people. Like, the way to interact with people is the way you and I are doing it right now, just talking to people. And I think the vast majority of problems would be solved amongst reasonable people if they just talked through. They just try to figure out, hey man, I didn't like that you did this. Well, all right, well, I was thinking when I did this, you're right. Here's why I did it. And this is what I was thinking, and I was wrong because of that. And if people could just say that, and people could accept that, and people could shake hands or hug it out, rather than have a fucking Twitter beef that leads to a gunfight. I mean, literally, that's the way we exchange information with each other back and forth through social media is the absolute worst way people can talk. You're not looking at each other. You don't get any social cues. You don't feel any empathy towards that person. That you're not in front of them. You're not there. And you're looking to see how many people agree or disagree, who's liking or disliking, because it's a public thing, right? So how many likes do they get? Their thing got 400 likes. Mine only got 20. Shit. Am I wrong here? It's just a terrible way for us. It's a newfound way for us to communicate and a terrible way for us to communicate. We're not designed for it. This is not how we evolved. We evolved to communicate with social cues and to look at each other and be around each other. And, you could say something to a person and you're both laughing. Or you see it written down the same way, and you're like, that guy's a fucking asshole.
Yeah, even from a leadership perspective, we'll talk about this a lot with, hey, I'll send you an email, that says, hey, Joe, can you get this project done next week? Thanks. And you're in a bad mood when you read that,
Yeah.
You're going, who the hell do you think you're telling? But if I was like, hey, Joe, can you get this project done by next week? We really need it. And I'm looking at you and kind of give me a blank stare, and I explain it to you a little bit more, and all of a sudden it turns into a perfectly good conversation.
Exactly.
But when I send you that email, or in this case, a tweet,
right,
then you hate me.
Yeah, it's like we got management to do, right?
Yeah.
You gotta when you want something out of someone, or you want some things to get done, you got to manage that person's personality and mood, and you got to manage the relationship that you have with each other. And you have to be proactive. You'd have to call them, what's up, man? How you doing? Everything good? You good? Like, they have to get a good feeling out of you.
Yeah.
And you got to say, listen, I got to ask you this favor. I need this thing from you. And then you're rolling, and everything's good. But
exactly.
If you don't do it that way, then people go, fuck this guy. Oh, this guy just wants things from me. Or this guy's annoying. Or, this guy's treating me like a bitch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The world through Zoom right now. So we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings. So my company, Echelon Front, just the video alone increases your ability to communicate, right? Massively. It doesn't get all the way there.
Right.
But just being able to look at someone and have a conversation with them, as opposed to either just hearing them on the phone or absolutely. So that idea of, hey, I'm actually going to sit down and talk to you. I'm actually going to sit down. Hey, I'll meet you. We pivoted, obviously, once, we used to go into, or we still do, but going into businesses and working with them. Shaking hands, how you doing, talking to them. And then all of a sudden, in 3 days, we were doing everything online. Everything, hey, meet me on this Zoom call. And you can get there. You can get 97% effectiveness just by looking at someone and talking to them. You know, like I said, there's a little percentage that you're still not going to get. But if you think you're going to communicate effectively through social media tweets, you're just freaking wrong.
Yeah, that's one step below email, right?
Yeah.
Social media tweets is one step below email. Email's one step above that. Phone calls is one step above that. Zoom is a step above that,
Yep.
another layer. Person to person's the best.
Person to person's the best.
That's what we're designed for.
Yep.
Everything else is just... and that's what's leading to all this fucking madness and chaos.
Madness.
A lot of it is fueled. It's weaponized by social media tweets and
Yeah, because by the way, when you send me a tweet to be an asshole to me, I actually just retweet that and tell everyone what an asshole you are. A bunch of people retweet it as well. It's freaking mayhem.
oh god.
We're not working together. You know, we're not working together, right? That's another thing that COVID did. Right? All of a sudden, we took everyone and isolated them. You're not seeing them.
Yeah.
You're not talking to them. So now everyone is almost strictly communicating by these methods that you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is horrible. Horrible for society. Horrible for society. The idea of coming to work in a place, right? The idea of, hey, I'm going to show up and work at a place with other people. That is such a huge part of getting back to where we need to be. Like when you pull everyone out of work and even worse, and I'm not even just beyond COVID. You know, what happens? We've moved all manufacturing overseas, right? So all those people that used to go and work in the same place every day, that used to show up and have a common mission and a common goal, they don't have that anymore. Much of the middle class doesn't have that anymore. They used to have it. They don't have it anymore. And that's, interestingly, China's middle class is growing right now. Why is their middle class growing? Because they're manufacturing, they're making things, they're filling that void of people that have that level of skill set of, hey, you know what? I just got out of high school. I can't afford college. So what am I going to do? Right? Oh, well, in China, well, you can say, okay, well, I guess I'm going to work at a factory. Hey, it's a horrible sweatshop. It's whatever. They need to improve their conditions. But hey, these people have a job, they have a purpose, they're moving in a certain direction. In America, we've kind of, on a massive scale, gotten rid of that class of people's purpose.
And that's a big focus for you, right? With your company Origin in particular.
Yeah. Oh.
Which, by the way, I got the boots. They're fucking dope. You guys make great shit. It's like really high quality, really beautifully manufactured stuff. And there's something very valuable right now about American made. It used to be, it was very divisive. Like if you said American made, like, what are you, xenophobic? You don't like foreigners? What the fuck is wrong with you? But now you realize, like, oh, with COVID, you know, we were cut off from even getting goods and supplies from other countries. And then we were getting so much of our medical supplies from China. And then we're getting so much of our vaccines and medicine, all these different things manufactured by China. You're like, hey, why don't we do that here? Well, we used to, but it was cheaper by like $1 a thing to send it over there. Like, oh, Christ. And people are realizing now there's a great benefit to making things here in America. And it's not just this idea of national pride. National pride's great, but also like you don't have to go anywhere to get things, and you keep jobs here.
Yeah. And I think Kanye West is looking to build same thing as we're doing. He wants to manufacture stuff in America. Why? Because he knows when you have a bunch of underprivileged kids, the best thing you can provide a bunch of underprivileged kids is jobs. Jobs that they can, entry-level jobs. Hey, you know, when I was a kid, it was almost like, hey, if you're not careful, you're going to end up working in the factory, right? That's what's going to, you can end up working in a factory. No one wanted a factory job. The thing is, so that kind of became a mantra. Oh, you don't want to work in a factory, you better go to college. Well, first of all, factory work has changed. There's jobs that people do in a factory that takes a massive skill set. And the boots, the Origin boots, we're probably a year, 2 years, 3 years from losing the knowledge of how to actually do that. And luckily, my buddy Pete has started, grabbing people that know how to do it and passing that information down to the next generation so we can actually be a self-sufficient country. And we can bring back those jobs of people that, look, that's a proud way to make a living. These are craftsmen, like you said, these are craftsmen and craftswomen, by the way. Our factory is mostly filled with women. And they're out there, they have a skill set, they're learning a skill set, there's upward mobility. As you get better at your job, as you can do more things, you can make more money. And by the way, you're making something. You're making something with your hands. You're producing something here in this country. That's just like, well, it's like when you go hunting, when I go hunting, you get something for yourself. There's a certain feeling of being self-sufficient. And America on a large scale, especially during COVID, we look up and say, wait a second, we can't even make that stuff. We don't even know how to make that. That's a nightmare.
Well, the boots in particular. Think about if you started from scratch. Like if I started from scratch, I don't know shit about how to make a boot. If it would take, there's a long learning curve of figuring out how to make an excellent boot that fits right and is well made and durable, like those boots that you guys sell. Like I was looking at this thing, I'm like, they fucking put some time and effort into this thing. Like this is a really well crafted piece of art.
Yeah.
I mean, it's functional artwork.
And that knowledge, because that's not our generation that learned that.
Right.
We're pulling that information from the old shoe dogs up in Maine that are 60 years old, 70 years, almost, out of the workforce, having to bring them back into the workforce to educate the younger generation on how to actually do this. We got a kid up there. His name is Cameron. Oh, he's 22, he's a young kid. And he has learned now how to weave the material for our gis. So he's the guy that knows how to weave material. This is so complicated when you see all these different pieces of string coming together, get this big machine with.
So he's got like a loom?
Yeah, we've got looms up there, but we had to get the knowledge, right, from the old timers that said, okay, let me show you how to do this. And like you just said, how long would it take to figure out a loom on your own? First of all, I think I would fail because I don't think I'd have the patience if I just had this machine to look at. So capturing this knowledge so that we can become a self-sufficient country again, it's got to be paramount in what we're doing. And it's not just, hey, because I'm pro-America. Yes, I am. But if we want to get rid of the kind of social unrest that we have right now. Hey, in Ramadi, you got a 15-year-old kid that's putting a roadside bomb in the road. You know why he's doing that? Is he doing it for some big ideology? No, he's not. He's doing it because he's going to get paid $50 by the insurgents. He wants a job. He wants a life. He wants to make money. What happens in America? What happens with kids in the inner city that are underprivileged when they don't have a job? What are they going to do? What are they going to do? They're going to fall into, oh, maybe I'll sell drugs, maybe I'll commit robberies, whatever I'm going to do. But they're not doing it by choice in many cases. Or if they're doing it by choice, it's because they don't see any other choices to even make. So we've let our manufacturing go away. And now we've got voids. We've got voids where people don't have an ability to make an income. And that's just a complete loss of pride, right? If you don't have the ability to earn money, to take care of yourself, to take care of your family, if you don't have that ability, what are you going to do? You're going to figure out how to make it happen.
It's so short-sighted too. I mean, it was all done for just a small amount of profit per item. Small amount of profit per item, and it cost the country so much.
Yeah, and then the narrative became, we're not able to do it. That's why we don't do it. We're not able to do it. That became the narrative. Well, even the big corporations would say, well, we'd love to make stuff here, but it's impossible. It's impossible.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Completely and totally ridiculous.
It's also like when you go through Detroit and you realize that Detroit at one point in time in the early 20th century was one of the richest countries in the world. Or one of the richest cities in the world. You go through it and you realize, okay, this is where they were making all the fucking badass cars. All the amazing American cars of the 60s and the 70s, they were all made right there. And then they fucked up. Someone made some decisions to save a little bit of money and make a little bit of money and completely short-sighted, didn't look at the economy as a whole, didn't look at the nation from a position of a patriot, someone who looks at the country in a whole, what's best for the country? They just said, what is the best way that we can maximize our profit? Well, we need to set up factories in Mexico and China and all these other places we can get people to work for nothing. You can't buy a fucking cell phone that's made in America. All the people that design and engineer cell phones for Apple, they're right here. They're not making them here. There's not a fucking single cell phone that's made in America. Try buying one that's made with all American parts, all American labor in America. Well, what?
No
That
such thing
doesn't exist.
And what you're going to be told is it can't be done.
That's hilarious.
Cannot be done. That's what's cool about Elon Musk. He's like,
Yes.
oh, watch this.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll make cars here. I'll make them awesome. I'll
Yeah.
make rocket ships, whatever the hell else that guy's
like
making.
fucking tunnels under the earth. Yeah, we need a couple more of those dudes. Yeah, it's good that people are opening their eyes, though. It's good that people are realizing, because of the pandemic and because of the fact that all goods and services that were being imported on a daily basis were shut down.
Yep.
And also people were terrified of getting things over there. What are you going to spray everything down? Everything's infected. And I'm scared. What do I do?
Yeah.
But the medicine is the craziest one. The fact that we rely on China for some ungodly percentage of all of our medicine. Like, holy shit, guys. Like, is this the right way to do this? Just for profit?
Yeah. It seems like we got a little bit lucky with COVID.
Yes.
Like, right? A little bit lucky because it turned out to be not bad.
Did you ever get the antibody test?
No.
Fuck, I should have tested you today.
Sorry.
Because you think you might have had it, right?
So the end of January, right as this thing was kicking off, I did a live tour. I did Austin, then I did Washington, D.C., then I did New York City, Seattle, San Francisco, and L.A. Every event, shook hands and bro hugged between 1,000 and 2,000 people. That's what I did at the end of January. I went to the absolute like ground zero locations for COVID and just bro hugged and talked to a bunch of people and shook hands and, just got after it. And then I got sick. Like a week later, 2 weeks later, I guess it was February. I was sick. And I was like, gee, I wonder what that is. And then March came around and
What
we started
kind
hearing
of
the sick, like,
Coughing?
it wasn't real bad. It wasn't real bad, but it was it was bad enough that, I think I might've skipped like, I'm just going to stretch today because I really feel like crap for a workout type of thing. So I wasn't down hard. I wasn't I didn't miss anything, but I felt bad. And so I figured that was my COVID experience. My wife got sick. My son got sick, 2 daughters in college, and my young daughter didn't get sick at all. My 10-year-old daughter didn't get sick at all. So I said,
Sounds like it.
yeah. But yeah, did you have it or not?
No, I didn't. I'm making a fucking text right now. I'm gonna get a doctor in here in an hour and a half when we're done. I'm gonna make this happen because I want to find out. You would be the only guy that's tested positive if you did. No, we had Tim's buddy. What's his name? Ben. Yeah, but he didn't. False positive. Then we tested him again.
Yeah, I think it would be crazy if that travel schedule that I had, sitting on all those airplanes from and to and from all those different airports, in all those airports, that's just crazy.
Yeah. All right. I'm asking right now. Can we get one at 3:30? Bam. I'm gonna make it happen.
That was another. We're talking about egos. The scary thing about the whole COVID unraveling was that the leadership wouldn't say, hey, you know what? I actually think I was wrong about this and we're moving in this direction now.
Right.
Not just leadership, but everyone.
Right.
Everyone just, hey, no, you know what? I think I was wrong here. Maybe we need to adjust this. So you didn't get to see that.
That's a great point because that really was a failure of leadership because it was very clear at some point in time when they found out, when they did the large-scale antibodies tests, particularly in California, and they were like, Jesus Christ, hundreds of thousands of people have been exposed to this. This is not what we thought. Like, and the amount of people that are actually sick, instant result back.
COVID inbound.
You're dead. The amount of people that actually tested positive for the antibodies was way higher than they thought it was.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that were actually hospitalized was way lower. And then they looked at the average death that people died. It's actually older than the average death that people died.
Yeah. My son pointed that out to me.
Yeah, we shut down the fucking economy for that?
Yeah. I guess I was a little bit whatever. I was pretty cavalier through the whole thing.
Our buddy Dr. Pete.
Yeah. He was
Peter Attia was a little nervous.
Well, he was way nervous because he was in early, right? And when you saw the early stuff,
yes.
When you're like, hey, it's 1 out of every 10 people are dying.
Right.
But even he was making adjustments. He said, wait a second, in Italy, there's different cities. That was, I think, where he started changing his his attitude. He said, wait a second, in Italy, there's different cities. And in some cities, they're really compressed together, and people are old people living with young people in the same place. And, oh, wait a second, we need to separate this out. And then it just, hey, it wasn't as bad. Thank God.
Yeah, thank God it wasn't as bad. And my buddy Andrew Schultz had a great point. He said, basically, COVID exposed weaknesses in both business and in people's health. That's what it really did.
Yep.
The lockdown did, because there was businesses that literally couldn't survive a week without money coming in. Well, that's a badly managed business, or a business that has a very small and narrow profit margin.
Yep.
And then there's people that literally can't survive any sort of disruption in their immune system. Their immune system is shattered. One of the things that came out of it that I found out from Dr. Rhonda Patrick was that 70% of America is deficient in vitamin D. 70%. 29% is severely deficient, to the point where they have medical issues because of a deficiency in vitamin D.
Yeah, you got to get on that. You got to get on the vitamin D for sure.
Got to get on the vitamin D, and the best way to get it is to get out in the sun. And that's the one thing you weren't supposed to do. The whole thing is fucking madness. It was a perfect storm.
Yeah, it's like when the plague in the Black Plague, they thought it was cats. They thought cats delivered the plague to everyone, so they killed all the cats. But it wasn't the cats; it was the rats and the mice. And so when you killed the cats, guess what happened to the rats and the mice? They went insane. So it was almost the same kind of thing you see unfolding.
Yeah.
And no one saying, "Hey, you know what? Actually, we're wrong here.
Right.
Hey, you know what? And what about the masks?" So this was crazy. I got some buddies that texted me. They said, "Hey, there's this thing coming. Origin, you guys should start making masks, just to cover your face." And I said, "Oh, okay, I don't know anything about this stuff." I talked to my buddy Pete. I said, "Hey, it sounds like that we're going to need to make masks." And he says, "Okay." So we start thinking about, hey, how would we make these things? And then a couple days later, the government comes out and says, masks don't do anything. Don't worry. Don't wear a mask. Don't get masks. So I talked to Pete. I said, "Hey, man, it looks like this isn't a good idea. It looks like we don't need to do it because it looks like it doesn't help at all." 5 days later, they're like, everyone wear a mask at all times. And by the way, we're going to pass laws that require you to wear a mask. I called Pete. I'm like, it looks like we need to make masks, And we ended up making a couple 100,000 masks. And we were sending them to, this is the weird thing, we're sending them to hospitals. Like, we donated thousands of masks to hospitals. And then, 2 weeks later, it was like, no, actually, they don't do anything. I still don't know.
Well, it's hard the problem is people get shamed. And the World Health Organization came out and basically said the only reason you should be wearing a mask, what is the CDC? No, Fauci said U.S. government held off promoting face masks because it knew shortages were so bad that even doctors couldn't get enough.
So is he just saying that now?
That was this morning or today, since we started.
So guess what? We all got lied to.
We all got lied to.
Held off on promoting face masks because it knew shortages were so bad, even doctors couldn't get enough.
Recently, the CDC said the only people that should be wearing masks are people that are treating COVID patients, and that regular people shouldn't be wearing masks. And then the World Health Organization said that asymptomatic people, it's extremely rare that they transmit to other people. So we were worried about asymptomatic people, which is the reason why we kept kids out of school.
And we were worried about overwhelming the hospitals, which is why we did all this other stuff as well.
Which is what drove me crazy about my kids' school. I was like, hey, you fucks, this doesn't even kill the kids. It's killing, the kids get killed by the flu. Meanwhile, you don't even scan the teachers or the staff or anybody. People have the flu. They don't want to miss a day of work. They just fucking show up and give it to everybody. That's normal. And kids actually die from the flu. And it's not a small number. It's not a small number of people that die from the flu. Last year was 62,000. I mean, it's not as many as COVID, but then you're hearing two camps. You're hearing one, the COVID deaths are actually underreported because a lot of people die from COVID and they don't even register it. Okay. Boy, I guess it's worse than it is. And then you're hearing, no. Actually, we're getting incentivized to report deaths as COVID. Elon Musk on the podcast said if you got killed by a shark, but you were COVID positive, they would list it as a COVID death. Obviously, he was being facetious, but not entirely. Because there's a lot of people with leukemia that also had COVID listed as a COVID death. Obesity, heart attacks listed as a COVID death because they tested positive for COVID. Cancer also had COVID death.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck.
That's really disturbing. You know, when you hear those statistics, then you see these things that they're saying, and just the lack of trust that you end up with the government.
Exactly.
When the government is already, people just generally don't really trust the government a lot, right?
Right.
There's no one that's always thinking the government is always giving them the straight skinny.
And it goes back to this clickbaity bullshit. My wife pointed out this story yesterday where she's reading about this kid that died, 17-year-old kid, perfectly healthy, it says. She reads into the article, type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is not perfectly healthy.
No.
That's really sick and fucking dangerous, and you have to take insulin to stay alive.
Yeah, and think you can get complications from like, oh, everyone's living type 1 diabetes. Diabetics can live real normally, and then they can have an instance that causes them to die.
Yeah, they can have their foot removed. Yeah, there's all sorts of shit that goes wrong when you have diabetes. Your immune system is severely compromised. But it's like we're our information, it's not pure. We're getting all this muddied thing. And Fauci telling us the only reason why they told us not to wear masks is because they knew you didn't have enough. Like, holy shit. How many people died because of that, you fuck? And then the World Health Organization says, actually, no one died because of that. You don't have to worry about it. You really don't need to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Like, fucking, what is happening?
I think so much of this ego plays so much into this of people not wanting to admit they're wrong.
Yes.
Not wanting to. Here's another thing that people won't say. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Like, as a leader, I've been in situations where I did not know. This is something I tell leaders all the time. I say, listen, tell your people the truth about what's happening. By the way, we're seeing examples where this is factually not happening inside America right now. If you're a leader, tell the people the truth about what's going on. That's what you need to do. And then people come back to me and they say, well, what if I don't know what? What if I don't know the truth? Then what you do is you say, hey, I don't know the truth. Hey guys, I don't know exactly how this is going to play out. These are some contingencies that I'm preparing for. That is so much more acceptable from the troops than when you try and pretend like you know what you're talking about and it turns out you're wrong.
Right.
I mean, Trump does this so much that people lose track of it, right? Where he thinks something and he just goes out on a limb. I mean, he just walks right out on a limb and says, hey, this COVID stuff will be gone in a week.
Yeah.
And you know, then he just saws off the limb behind his foot. He does that all the time. It's a good example of how not to lead, because then people start to trust you less and less. And then when things like this happen where you find out that they actually did purposely. Now think if they would have said this, like, oh, we're worried about, we don't have enough masks. Then you know what you come out and say? You come out and you say, listen, everyone, we're not 100% sure what the masks do for people, but we do know this. Inside of a medical environment, we have to prioritize getting those people that are absolutely exposed these masks. That is why we are going to put some kind of a control over who's allowed to buy them. You just tell the truth.
Well, that was kind of happening at some places, like Amazon was only doing that. They were only selling those, what is it, N95
N95s?
masks? Yeah, they were selling them only to hospital workers. And
there you go.
They were allocating them along with other types of hand sanitizer and a bunch of different things they were selling specifically to them first and first responders.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
What you don't do is say, hey, everyone, don't worry about it.
Right. Right, what Fauci did. But if he's saying that, like, well, hey, fucko, now we can't trust you ever again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the freaking problem. Yeah. You're looking at this guy, next time there's some kind of disease, next time there's a problem. Yeah. How do we know if we can listen to you or not?
There's also a thing he was saying a couple of weeks ago that if the United States doesn't open up soon, we could face permanent damage.
Economic damage?
Yeah, permanent economic damage.
You think?
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, hey, how come you didn't say this before? How come you didn't say, hey, we have to weigh in the pros and the cons here?
Yeah.
You know?
You should have, and this is actually something I talked to Peter T about it. I said, hey, it seems like maybe some people should be quarantined and other people shouldn't. And he's like, yeah, absolutely.
100%.
So, like my dad, who's an older guy, he's an older guy, compromised immune system. Guess what? He should be isolated.
Yes.
He should be quarantined.
Yeah.
Should my 17-year-old son, should my 20-year-old daughter, my 18-year-old, my 10-year-old, should they be in isolation? Should they be quarantined? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Hey, first week, 2 weeks, where we're hearing it's a 10% Bob, we're hearing all these things. Cool. You can make an in extremis call. You can say, hey guys, I don't know what's happening, but in Italy, it looks real bad. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to shut down for 2 weeks. I'm sorry, but this is what we're going to do. And you go, the nation says, okay, we get it. And then 2 weeks later, you say, you know what? it looks like it really might impact our medical systems. We're going to shut down for another 2 weeks. Just another 2 weeks. And everyone goes, whew, I got to pay my mortgage, but okay, 2 more weeks. And then you say, then you got to have the courage and the ability to put your ego in check and say, you know what? Thank you. May not have been necessary. We don't know right now, but it looks like we can start opening back up. Let's rock and roll.
The other problem is once they tell you what to do, they don't want to stop having that power and control.
Oh, yeah, they love
Our
that.
governor literally said, wear masks because then we can get back some of our freedoms.
Yeah.
You're going to give away freedoms? You got that kind of power? Maybe I should run for governor.
Yeah.
I didn't know I could just control freedoms.
You got my vote.
Give away freedoms?
The business is surviving, right? You're talking about the businesses surviving. There's a lot of businesses that, especially little businesses, right? Little jiu-jitsu schools, little restaurants. You want a restaurant to operate on 50% capacity? Restaurants aren't making this kind of money where they can throw away 50% of their profits.
Right, exactly.
50% of their capability to make money. Because they still got to have that cook.
Yeah.
That cook is there, the dishwasher's there, right? There's your bare minimum.
Yeah.
And they got to be there no matter what. If you serve 50 people, great. If you only serve 25, you don't make any money.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of businesses that run that day-to-day, month to month, paycheck to paycheck to try and stay afloat. That's what America does. And sometimes they're able to creep out of that and they get ahead, and that's awesome. That's how you end up with these big, powerful companies.
Yeah, I've had a couple of restaurant owners in, Adam Perry Lang, who owns APL Steakhouse, and Janet Zuccarino and Evan Funky, who own Felix. Well, she owns Felix. Janet owns Felix, and he's the head chef. And they were explaining to me profit margins, and it's fucking crazy. It's when you really look at how difficult it is to run a restaurant and all the decisions that have to be made. And, food goes bad if you keep it too long, and you got to buy a certain amount of food. You anticipate a certain amount of customers. You got to know your customer. He was explaining, we know our customers, so I know most of them are not going to order this. So I'm going to have a certain amount of meals that I'm going to have of the fish and more meals of the steak, and the pasta is primary. That's what most people are coming here for. And fuck. And then you tell them, oh, you can only open up at 60%, and waitresses have to wear a fucking hazmat suit. And, it's like, God damn, man.
What are they, 10%, 15%, 5% profit margin?
I think they were saying 14% is how they operate. But it's difficult. It's very difficult. And, people don't want to spend too much money on meals, and so it has to be kind of engineered. Like how can you do it right? And Janet has had a ton of successful restaurants. Like, she's a wizard at it. I mean, she's been doing it straight out of college. And her problem was she was in the process of building multiple restaurants. So all of her money were out, even though she's extremely profitable and very, very successful at all these restaurants. She's building out all these other restaurants at the same time with that money because she knows how to make money. Yeah. She knows how to run these businesses, so she's doing it. So she's got a Jamaican restaurant. She's got an Italian restaurant. She's got all these things happening. And then, boom, the government tells you have to shut down.
That's the profit margin. So there's so many because we work with all kinds of different businesses.
Yeah.
And the profit margin on many, many businesses is really, really lean. One of my favorite examples is big construction companies. Big construction companies that are doing, $500 million projects or, $700 million bridges and coliseums and stuff. Their profit margin is like 4%.
Holy shit.
4%.
Holy
5%.
shit.
If they do awesome, it's like 6%.
That is so insane.
And they're, ordering concrete, and they've got to have it show up a certain time, and then the rebar wasn't in place. Like, it's crazy. The margin for error is so small. And there's so many businesses that operate like that. And a lot of times I think some of the people in government, they've never been in business before.
Right.
And so they don't understand that for them, hey, just operate at 50% capacity inside your restaurant. You'll be fine.
That's a very good point.
But they've never run a business. I have a jiu-jitsu gym. We got shut down. So now they're telling us, hey, you can allow people back in the gym. They just have to be 6 feet apart. Well, you can't do jiu-jitsu 6 feet apart. You can't do Muay Thai 6 feet apart. So what are we supposed to do now? And by the way, Well, what about, oh, you want us to check people and we want to have this, there's all these protocols that they're putting in place to have someone come into the gym. So now we got to hire extra people. We got to hire extra cleaning staff because the gym has to shut down for this period of a day and they need to re-clean everything. Like, obviously the people that are making these rules have never been in business before.
Yeah, telling a person who is running a jiu-jitsu gym that people have to be 6 feet apart. The whole jiu-jitsu is 0 apart.
0 feet apart.
Zero space. That's the whole goal of jiu-jitsu.
Yes, it is.
Smash. It's the whole goal. Take your body and smash someone's body with it. The whole idea is no space.
Yeah.
That literally is the foundation of jiu-jitsu. A pressure applied with no space.
Mm-hmm. And this goes back to the idea of, as a leader, taking the information from the frontline troops and saying, how, you tell me what's a good way to run this. You tell me what's a good way to run this, and let's see if we can figure out a solution to this problem.
You would really want to talk to jiu-jitsu gym owners. And my suggestion, I've never run a jiu-jitsu gym. I've been in a shitload of them. My suggestion would be have people fill out a waiver so they waive their rights. Have people fill out a form that says, I have not tested positive. I've shown no symptoms of illness. I promise that if I do, I will not train and I will get myself tested. Testing is readily available now. You know, for a long time, we were getting shamed because we were testing people.
Yeah, I was tracking on that.
Angry that we were testing people. Like, look, you can test people too, you fuck, just like you could buy a steak. It just costs money. You know, are you mad that people have steak and you can't afford a steak? Well, you know, there's people that there are different stages of life, you know, in this game called society and capitalism and advance. You start off at square A, you know, everybody starts at a different spot, granted, but I started at the bottom. And you figure out a way to get a fucking test. And if you're in a spot right now in your life where you can't have a test, well, definitely don't go and expose yourself till we know what the fuck it is. But don't get mad if people can afford tests, you crazy fucks.
Yeah.
And what we're at right now with jiu-jitsu gyms is you should have a form that you fill out, just like when I was at a restaurant. I went to the Lonesome Dove restaurant. Shout out to them in Austin, Texas. Fantastic place. They make you fill out a little form. It says you haven't been tested positive. You're not sick. You're not showing any symptoms. You know, they do a little temperature check your forehead. Oh, you're looking good. All right, come on in. Sit down.
Did they pack you in or did they keep you?
No, they keep you a little bit separated, but that was 2 weeks ago. And there's another place, Gus's Fried Chicken. Shout out to Gus's. Best fucking fried chicken on earth in Austin, Texas. We went there 2 weeks ago, and you couldn't eat there. You had to wear a mask in the restaurant, and you had to order takeout. So we got takeout. Then we came back again yesterday. Yesterday, no fucking mask. Everybody's in there sitting. All the seats are packed. They strongly suggest you wear a mask.
And no one's listening.
No one wore a fucking mask. The waiters all wore masks, but it's like things are getting different. And there was another restaurant, Red Ash, that we ate at Saturday night. That place had 75% capacity, and you had to wear a mask until you got to your table, and then you had to wear a mask again if you had to go take a leak. You had to put your mask back on, take a leak, come back, and it doesn't make any sense. It's like they're just health department guidelines, and people they're trying to open up, and they don't want to get sued, and they don't want to get people mad, and like we're trying to protect everybody, but we don't know how to do it. And it doesn't matter what the science is. You could show them an article that shows that masks are bullshit, and they're still going to tell you, but you're still going to wear your mask because we're playing a little game here. We're playing a game called Keep People Safe. Nobody's saying a goddamn thing about take your vitamins, drink water, stay healthy, work out,
good.
Get out in the sun. No, the government never says that. You don't hear Governor Newsom with his fucking goofy slick back hair. He's not telling you to go work out and get in the sun.
It's going to be I think America can only take so much. And I kind of said this from the beginning. Like, you can keep America in lockdown for a little while, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and then people start saying, you know what, I got to go out. I got to go make something happen. I got to do something. I got to earn money. And it's the people that are looking around saying, well, I don't really need to earn any money right now. They're the ones that are saying everyone stay in your house and don't come out and wear a mask.
All right, we got a doctor coming at 3:30.
No,
Told him I think I got you a positive this time. He's been wanting to get a positive. He's like, fuck.
Oh, he hasn't got any positives yet?
A bunch of goddamn healthy people in here. Yeah, I've had, I think I've had 8 tests, 4 nose swabs. I've had 4 nose swabs and 4 antibody tests. Me personally, I've still come out negative every time. But the other thing that he said, and this doctor's a very smart guy and a young, healthy guy. He said, that doesn't mean you haven't been exposed to it. It means your immune system did its job.
Really?
This is another thing that people are saying. People are saying, oh, well, you just got lucky. You haven't been around someone who had it. He goes, no. Many of the people that I tested are positive are in a family where the other people that are also in that family are negative. So they have it. They've been around these people for fucking weeks, and they don't get it. Why? Because they have a better immune system, particularly children.
So I guess I'm in a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Then, because if I had it, if I tested positive, it's like, see, no factor.
Exactly.
I powered through it.
You beat it.
Now, even if I didn't have it, I'm going to say, hey, see, I beat it.
Yeah.
I'm going to win-win.
Yeah. I know, well, depending upon what your results are, I know 9 people that have had it now. And out of those people, only one of them had it bad. And that was my friend Michael Yo. And he got it bad from, if it's real easy to track. He flew all the way to New York, no sleep.
What was the dates?
He was in January. January, Jamie? No. Early February or late January? March?
His show in New York was the very beginning of
So
March.
end of February. End of February, he was here. And then he went.
Yeah.
Okay. So he left here. That weekend went to New York. No sleep, right? Flies to New York. Does radio, does TV, also does his comedy gigs. No sleep. Does gigs the next day. Same deal.
Yep.
Does promo, all this shit. Flies back home. No sleep. Gets up in the morning. Drives to Vegas with his wife and kids. The fucking kids screaming in the car. Bah! Drives back home that night. Hangs out with his wife's family in Vegas and drives back home that night. So 8 hours in the car just that day. Then the next day he's got auditions. The day after that he's got auditions. And then boom, hits the wall and he's fucked. And he feels like shit.
Yep.
And he felt like shit. By the way, his mom got it. She also tested positive. Beat it in a day.
How long was he down for?
He was down for a week. But he ran himself to also vitamin D deficient. Yeah, so all those things. Ran himself down, vitamin D deficient, doesn't take care of himself. So like, but he caught the perfect storm of exhaustion and travel. Travel fucks you up. It fucks you up.
Yeah, and I, leading into this, I've been traveling all the time my whole life. As a matter of fact, the lockdown is the most consecutive nights I've ever spent with my wife since we've been married, and we've been married for 20 years. Most consecutive nights because, I was in the Navy, I was deploying, I was going on trips, and then when I retired, I was working with consulting all over the place.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, so it's been kind of cool hanging out with my wife night after night.
All right, these are FDA approved kits too, so we're good.
So we're totally good. We're going to find out for real.
Fully legit. Doctor's pumped to find.
What do you
positive.
think? Do you think I've had it or not? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say because your youngest kid didn't get sick, and then the other people did get sick, but no one got it badly. And I know your family's very healthy. I know your daughter's a savage, your son's a savage. I would imagine you probably had it. Thinking about all the places you've been, I bet you test positive for the antibodies. I know a few jiu-jitsu guys that have got it, but they all just got coughs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And plus on top of all this, I'm in my gym. I was in my gym.
Oh yeah.
I got all kinds of. We have a lot of people that show up at my gym because they just want to train. They want to come check it out. Yeah. And my gym is big. We've got 2,000 members. Right?
Really?
Yeah. It's 2,000 members because it's not just a jiu-jitsu gym.
What's
Victory MMA and Fitness in San Diego, California. But so it's a big gym.
Yeah.
And every 2,000 members, that means they're all interacting with, 3 or 4 other people outside of the gym, if not 5 or 10 people. So,
and they're literally sweating in each other's mouths.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. That's another indicator. When I got sick, my main training partner, this guy, Andy Burke, who I train with all the time, he got sick. And then his girlfriend got sick, who's also a jiu-jitsu fighter, MMA fighter. She got sick too. So,
very likely.
We'll see. I'm curious.
It's hard. When you train hard, you get sick. It's part of the thing too. When you break down your body and your immune system gets, when you're one of those guys that trains really hard, you do have a tendency to get little colds because your immune system gets tested.
Here's something that I've noticed. When I have downtime, like let's say, this has happened to me a few times. I'm going to Montana, and I'm super stoked. I'm going to go up there and chill, right? As soon as I get up there, I get sick.
Really?
It's happened to me like maybe 3 times where I finally have 4 days or 5 days where I, don't have anything scheduled. I'm going to go up there. I'm going to shoot my bow. I'm going to chill. And I get up there and it's like my mind switches and all of a sudden I get sick. It's like I saved up illness to where I know I can be allowed to get sick. Has that ever happened to you?
No, but there's a good argument there for like just the way your mind controls your whole system.
Yeah.
Because your mind is just like pedal to the fucking
Yes.
metal, Slayer in the background.
Yes.
Rah, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And everything is go, go, go. And then when it's silence, your body's like, fuck, man, what have we been up to?
I feel like that happens. I was wondering if it ever happened to you, because it's happened enough times that I'm talking about it, right?
Well, my best example is Cam Hanes. That motherfucker's never sick. And if he's sick, he still runs anyway. He's just got like a little bit of a cough. But out of all the people that I know don't know anybody who's consistently putting in the kind of hours every day that he does.
Oh, yeah.
He runs 16 miles
He's a
every
madman.
fucking day.
Yeah.
Sometimes a marathon. Sometimes a marathon every day while he works 8 hours a day, and then he gets home and lifts weights. I mean, it's not like he runs and
he
that's
gets
it.
his reps in.
Yeah, he gets his reps in with his bow
Yeah.
every day.
And he's lifting.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. He doesn't take days off. That fucking guy's never sick. If he's sick, it's like, the next day he's running again.
Yeah.
You're looking at his Instagram, it's, hey, it's a great day to run. He's out there fucking. I think there's something to forcing your body to consistently and constantly perform.
Totally.
Yeah.
Imagine like Olympics, right? You're in the Olympics for wrestling, let's say, and you've got your whole entire life is on one day. If you get sick, it's like,
Right.
yeah. Anything bad happens that day, yeah, you're done.
Yeah, those big moments like that are fuck. I mean, you're so stressed out too, so your immune system is super jacked. But I think there's a thing about peaking for a big event, whether it's a fight or the Olympics or something, versus maintaining consistent conditioning. They're very different things. Like a good example is Tim Kennedy. Tim Kennedy went through, I believe, 2 camps in a row. Fight got canceled, kept training, went through another full camp, and then when he fought Kelvin Gastelum, that guy's never tired, and he was gassing out in the fight. And there's a real good indication from all involved that it was because of overtraining.
I know that when I would train fighters, you could absolutely see when they would overtrain. It wasn't a big question. You'd go in, you'd have a fighter that's whatever level at, let's say jiu-jitsu, because I'm training jiu-jitsu with them. And every day, you know, they feel a certain level, and then one day you come in and you train with them, and they just suck. And I would tell them, I'd be like, hey man, 2 days off, go eat some steak, because you would know 100% that they're overtrained.
Yeah,
100%.
What do you tell vegans? 2 days off, eat some steak.
Yeah, I would tell them definitely eat some steak. You need that steak. Get some steak in you.
Yeah, just give them an elk. Just give them just one good piece of backstrap. Just try. Just trust me. Just eat it and run through a fucking wall.
Yeah, that's the really weird thing about watching people go through camps, through fight camps. And, you know, I basically don't train fighters anymore like I used to, just because I don't have time anymore. But you would work so hard to make sure that on that night that they're there, that they're there. And some people get in the cage and they do better than they would normally do. Some people get in the cage and they don't do as good. And you got, you know, Jeremy Stevens is a great example, because especially when he first came out and started training with me, and he's not with us anymore, but when he first started training with us, like, he was a white belt in jiu-jitsu. But man, when he got in the cage, he would just elevate, man, like mentally, psychologically elevate. And he would perform way better in the cage. And then I've had other fighters that you'd get, like, they would be kicking people's asses in training, and then they get in the cage and it's a down step. And it's so hard to see that. So hard, is because sometimes those guys are very committed and they're working hard and they're doing great, and they just get in there and they just...
It's a psychological thing. You know, some people are dwarfed by the moment. It's very interesting to see. It's some people are also afraid of the embarrassment of losing. That's a big one, and they can't trust the process. They can't just remove themselves and just go out there and fight. Do you follow Muay Thai at all?
A little bit, but not to any great extent.
There's a guy who George St. Pierre brought into his training camp when he was doing The Ultimate Fighter, Jean-Paul Skarbalski, and he's this French savage Muay Thai fighter who would basically get drunk every night and showed up at training at GSP's camp drunk. Like, he was out all night. He was in Vegas, right? So the Ultimate Fighter's in Vegas. Drinks all night. shows up in the day the next day and fucks everybody up.
Yep.
And they're like, this is so embarrassing. Like, guys were like devastated. Like, this guy literally came in holding, he's got a cup, like from like one of those to-go cups from one of them Vegas clubs. He showed up in the morning. See if you can find it, because it's kind of hilarious. Looks like a guy who should be driving an Uber, okay? He's not built like a savage. He's just, his mind is just, he's got the I don't give a fuck, and he's got it down. And was a world champion Muay Thai fighter, beat champions at Lumpini Stadium in Thailand, and just an amazing fighter.
Well, you always hear about the comparisons of a black belt in jiu-jitsu versus a white belt, right? Somebody doesn't know anything, and it's real obvious. But when you get at a high level of Muay Thai, it's very similar. Maybe not quite as similar, because there's always this idea that, well, I at least know if I throw a punch, I at least know as a human how to throw a punch. At least there's some idea, right? There's some, like a normal human has no idea of how to do an arm lock.
Right.
Zero. You at least have some concept of how to throw a punch. So there is like a puncher's chance. But I remember the first time I sparred with a real Muay Thai guy, I felt like a white belt. I was like, oh, okay. Because I would think about throwing a kick and I would get, kicked myself. I would think about it and get kicked. And I was like, oh, he knows exactly what I'm going to do, just like a white belt in jiu-jitsu. You can predict everything that they're going to do.
There he is. So
I remember
he
this
shows
guy.
up. I mean, look, he's no six-pack. I mean, literally looks like a guy. If you saw that guy show up, you're like, look at this dad bod motherfucker. He showed up straight from the club. I mean, you can kind of tell he's drunk. And he gets in and starts training with these guys. And see if he can get to some actual training footage, because they were humiliated. I mean, he was ragged on these dudes and beating the shit out of them and dropping them. And it took, it looks like nothing, but it's the problem, he's a world-class kickboxer. And these guys just really have no idea how to handle his movement and the skills that he has.
People underestimate. People don't think there's as much of a difference between like a black belt in jiu-jitsu and what would be considered an equivalent, world champion in Muay Thai. Oh yeah,
there's a big difference.
Step in the ring and see how that works out for you.
Jiu-jitsu guys sometimes get cocky about that. I had a buddy of mine who was taking an MMA fight and he wasn't doing any striking. He was doing very little striking, and he was a really good ground fighter. And I said, "Do you know how you can toy with a guy on the ground and they really have no chance?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "People could do that to you standing." I go, "You have to understand that the fight starts standing. It's not like it's not EBI rules where you start on a guy's back and you have a really good chance of submitting him if you got a great rear naked choke. This is not that. This is you start 20 feet away from the guy and you're standing, and you have to close that distance. And you're not a great wrestler either."
Yeah, well, that's the key component, right?
Yes, it's a giant factor.
Because
right?
if you wrestle, you can go, well, at least I know I have a decent chance of taking him down.
Yes,
a decent chance, and even that's no guarantee anymore.
Well, I go back to Mark Schultz when he fought in the UFC. When Mark Schultz fought in the UFC, he only fought one UFC fight, but that's when we got to see like a world champion, Olympic gold medalist, top of the food chain wrestler. You're only on your feet if he wants you to be. Like you good luck throwing that punch or kick, because you have no chance. He's going to close the distance and drag you to the ground unless you have really good takedown defense. And back then, when he fought Big Daddy Goodrich, people didn't really have it. Unless they were wrestlers, they didn't really have good takedown defense. It hadn't really been established as like a part of the whole skill set of MMA yet. You basically had what you came in there with. You're a karate guy, that's what you had. You're a Muay Thai guy, that's what you got. You got to hope you land that elbow before that guy clinches with you.
And there is a overall strategic advantage to grappling.
Yes.
Because you can close the distance, and if you're going to punch me, you have to get close enough to you have to make contact with me, which means I can grab a hold of you and get you down. That's why the early UFCs, it was like, you're going to have to get close enough to either punch or kick me, and when you do that, I can grab a hold of you and get you to the ground.
Also, the chaos factor, especially in a street fight, the chaos factor is like bodies are flying, there's bad timing, the clinches happen. It's not like you'll watch the occasional street fight where a guy tees off on some drunk guy and lands the perfect punch and knocks him out cold. That does happen. But you know what also happens? Melee. Wild shit, misses, and then someone clinches. And then the worst thing in the world is to fight a grappler who's good at takedowns when you're on the concrete. Oof. That is the absolute worst thing in the world. You get suplexed on your head on the concrete. I mean, one of the worst things that could ever happen. You're basically getting hit in the head by the world.
Yeah. Well, this is why when I talk about, people say, well, what kind of self-defense You always say jiu-jitsu for self-defense, but you shouldn't let a street fight go to the ground. Here's how it works out. If you come to me and you want to fight me and you like square off like in a boxing stance, I can run away from you. Right? I can just run away. I can just run away. I'm going to get away from you. I don't want to fight you. If you want to kick me, I can run away from you. Like there's my primary self-defense is I'm just going to run away from you. When you grab a hold of me, now everything's different. I can't run away anymore. Now I have to actually know how to handle myself in a grappling situation. So that's why I start with jiu-jitsu. And look, absolutely, learn boxing, learn Muay Thai, and learn wrestling. Absolutely, no doubt about it. But the very first thing you need to learn is because if you want to fight me, I can run away. If you square off and you put your dukes up and say, come on, or you push me, good, I'm running away. That's fine. I'll take that. But as soon as you grab a hold of me, now I got a problem because I can't run away anymore.
The real problem is the ego, where people don't know how to fight, and someone puts their dukes up, and they decide to see what they can do. They decide in that moment to either fake it or just to like see if they can possibly hit the guy, and then they get ba-bink. Somebody tees off on them.
Yeah, I think that's. I think the whole thing with CTE right now. That's why I think the popularity of jiu-jitsu is going to continue because it's a large part of fighting. Same with wrestling. Grappling in general, I think, is going to continue to get more and more popular because of CTE. Because, as a parent, you're not looking, hey, I really want my kid to be sparring a lot when they're 13, right? No, there's not too many parents that are saying that right now. It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So I think, but you still want your kids to know how to fight, right? So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to teach them jiu-jitsu and wrestling and let them have that base. And then if they get older, hey, should they know how to throw punches? Absolutely. Should they get in the boxing ring sometimes and do some Muay Thai matches? Absolutely. You should absolutely do that as a human. But, you can do that when you're 17, maybe 16. You can start getting that stuff in. But the kids' jiu-jitsu, I don't think there's anything else better for them.
I completely agree. And I think with martial arts, with striking, it's good to know distance, just to understand where you're safe and where you're not safe, and understand tells, understand what's happening when someone does this. When someone does this, and then this is coming. When they do this is coming. Like, you should know that, because some people don't know that. You should know how to protect yourself, how to keep your hands up, how to duck under things. You should know that. You should understand the timing. You should understand distance and timing. Those are important things, but fucking swinging knuckles with some guy in the street is so goddamn dangerous because, first of all, you don't know what he knows, and everyone's vulnerable. Every person that gets punched in the face is vulnerable. And if you just want to have like some sort of a kickboxing match with some man on the concrete, like, I don't advise that. No. I advise clinch and trip.
Yeah, I advise get out of there.
Yeah, get out of there if you can.
That's actually what I advise.
Yeah, definitely. If someone wants to start some shit with you, you're absolutely better off just swallowing your ego and getting the fuck out of Dodge.
That's the Warrior Kid books,
yes,
right? Teach those kids, hey, there's going to be problems. There's going to be bullies. If you can, you don't need to fight them.
Yeah.
And somebody hit me up, because I'm always telling people train jiu-jitsu. Had somebody hit me up, I've tried it, but I don't. I want to try it. I tried it a couple times, but I don't like to fight. And I'm like, hey, if you don't like to fight, you more than anyone else should learn jiu-jitsu. Because if you know jiu-jitsu, your chances of having to fight will go down a lot just by the way you carry yourself, just the way by the way you present yourself. The chance of you having to fight go down a lot. Also,
with jiu-jitsu, you're involved in real life struggles. The thing about like karate sparring and a lot of light sparring is it's not the real chaos that comes with an actual fight. Whereas jiu-jitsu is full blast. Yeah. If someone's trying to get you, it's full. So you get used to full blast. You get accustomed to it. You know what to expect. If someone swings for you and you clinch with them, you know what it's like to resist with a 100% non-compliant body. Someone's like fucking really trying to get away from you. Really, it's not like play sparring.
Yes.
You can go full out.
And you know where this brings us right back to? Police officers.
Yes. Well, Andrew Yang said it best. He said, I think that every police officer should be a purple belt. Purple belt. That's an incredible statement. It's a good level, right? It's like an attainable level within a couple of years. But with a couple of years, man, you've got your ass kicked. You've kicked some ass. You've like a purple belt is basically a black belt who hasn't done enough time yet. That's all it is. Yeah. I mean, once you've got past blue belt, like blue belt is, I put in the time, I've learned how to do some stuff, and maybe I'll do this. I might make it. Purple belt, like, you basically, everybody who gets a purple belt, you want to grab them and go, hang in there. You are a fucking black belt. What's better to say? And you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You're going to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Just keep fucking going. You already have exhibited enough technique that you could actually one day achieve that. Just keep going.
Yeah, the amount of confidence and mental clarity that cops would have if every cop was a purple belt.
Oh,
it would be amazing.
Amazing.
Nothing better that we could do than to somehow make that happen.
Yeah.
Good idea for Andrew Yang.
The horrible video of this guy involved with this lady, and he's a cop, and he's talking to this lady, and she's non-compliant, and he grabs her, and he fucking brute strengths her to the ground and throws her on her stomach, and then gets her in a rear naked choke, and people are filming this and yelling. It's a terrible rear naked choke. You tell he sucks. The whole thing is terrible. Like, I couldn't imagine a black belt ever handling it that way. Ever. First of all, you wouldn't be so threatened by her. She's not physically threatening at all. And you wouldn't want to bully her and to show her that you could throw her around like that. It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen.
Fear, right?
Yes.
That's fear kicking in. And it's fear not only of his ego, but he might be legitimately... When's the last time he put hands on somebody? I mean, if you put hands on people a lot, you know you don't have to do what he did in that situation. I haven't seen the video, but you know you don't have to do that.
I think he's just a pussy. When I'm looking at the video, I'm like, I just think he just wants to throw his weight around, which is another thing you wouldn't do if you know how to fight. That's part of why a lot of people act like that, is because they really don't know how to fight. And that's really, they really don't know how to do that to a grown man. So when they're doing it to someone who they can do it to because they're just bigger, they do it. They'll force them. They'll impose themselves. They'll be a bully. It's horrible to see. But you're not going to see a black belt doing that to somebody.
No, just the amount of confidence that he has.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing with kids.
Yes.
You know, I posted something a few months ago, but it's some bully thing had popped up, and then I said, hey, if you want to stop bullying, have kids train jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, boxing.
They should have it in school. They should be teaching kids in school.
And here's the thing. People thought, I said, not only will it prevent them from getting bullied, it will prevent them from bullying.
Yes.
Which people don't understand. People cannot comprehend what that means. And it's exactly what you just said. If somebody actually knows how to fight, and you've been humbled, and you've been beat down, and you've been choked, and you know what that feels like, and you know what it means, and you know how that feels, the chances of you, look, you could still be an asshole, but the chances of you becoming a bully are way less.
Way less.
Than if you're insecure and scared and have trying to make up for your ego by abusing people. That's who becomes bullies.
Yes.
With kids and with adults.
100%.
The more you train, the more secure you are, the smaller your ego is, the more you're able to step back and see things clearly. That's one of the horrible things about that. The George Floyd was the other cops. They're not detached from the situation. They're all wound up in it. And jiu-jitsu teaches you, and fighting teaches you, that if you do that, if you allow yourself to get wrapped up into stuff, you're gonna make bad decisions.
I think also for kids, a lot of the reasons why they do horrible shit is because they have too much fucking energy. They're all jacked up with young hormones.
Oh, yeah. Testosterone.
Yeah.
Testosterone and
angst.
And angst. And, bro, it's kind of fun, right? It's kind of fun. Like, there's mayhem going on.
Yeah.
And is that the right word? Am I a jerk for saying that? I don't know. When I was a kid, that kind of mayhem, I wanted to be a part of it. And actually, I was talking to one of my LA cop buddies, and I was asking him the difference between like the 92 riots. Was it 92 or 93? Rodney King. 93. Those riots and these riots. Those riots, he was like, those were the people that kind of instigated and started and perpetuated those riots. Those were real, like, gangsters, like shot callers were making those things happen. These riots were, he was like, yeah, these are kids. These are kids that drove down from Riverside. These are kids that, and sure, some of their attitudes was like, hey, there's been, injustices against police. We want to stand up to that. Got it. And then he said, of course, there's a criminal element as well that are legit, normal robbery crews that are saying, oh, cool, we got some good cover right now. Let's get in there and make some, steal some stuff, and we probably won't get caught. But that's a big difference. So you do have an element of kids that are like, oh, there's some mayhem going on. There's some mayhem going on. Guess what 17-year-old boys like? They like mayhem. They like mosh pits,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You love that stuff.
Yeah.
That was my childhood. If there was some mayhem, I wanted to find it.
Right.
And that fuels these things.
Normal boy behavior.
Normal boy behavior, especially when those boys are getting told, don't go out, don't do this. And they're being locked up in houses right now with
Yes.
COVID. They've got freaking steam coming out of their ears.
And then all of a sudden the cops are going to stand down while you smash windows and steal shit and everybody can get free sneakers. Yes! It had nothing to do with George Floyd. It had so many things to do with so many different steps, so many different factors that it collided together on that one day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's man, I don't know how this winds up, man.
I don't know how it ends up either. It ends up with me getting the fuck out of L.A.
Gone, huh?
Looks like it.
Gone.
Looks like it. I just don't see the benefit. I want to come back and visit a lot, but it's just not a smart place.
Yeah, well, I'm
It's not
unfortunately
smartly managed either.
I'm rooted here, unfortunately, by the ocean.
Yeah.
Because I'm an ocean guy.
Yeah.
And so there's really limited choices in the world.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah, that's a problem. You know, they kind of got me.
You're that connected to the ocean. What is it about the ocean that you always post pictures of the sunrise in the ocean?
I don't think there's, going surfing, just going in the ocean. And plus my life was kind of being in the SEAL teams we always had that. It was part of our life. Part of our life was the ocean, growing up in the ocean. Just there's some, I don't know. I guess for me, it's a huge nature thing, right? Mm-hmm. People, you should go outside. Go outside and go hike in a mountain. Go to Montana and hike around, see what that feels like. Mm-hmm. Go to Idaho, check that out. Go to the mountains. Go to California mountains. You feel different. You feel different. Yeah. You feel humbled. You feel small. You feel perspective. So the ocean does that for me, and it's just mind clearing, right? You go out surfing, your mind is clear. It's kind of like jiu-jitsu. Hey, you got to get out there. You don't even know sometimes you don't even. You get done with a good roll in jiu-jitsu and you say, you don't barely even remember it because your mind is just gone. You're just monkey mind.
Zen.
This total Zen state. Same thing with being in the water for me, surfing. Same thing. I'm out here and my mind is just empty. It's monkey mind. And I think that's really good for you. Plus the fact it's humbling. Plus the fact it's healthy. So yeah, I just have a strong connection to the ocean. I know my son's a real waterman. He's out, he surfs all the time. I'd hate to do that to him. And then my little daughter's getting her surfing on. So yeah, it's just one of those things, man.
Yeah, I get it. There's a reason why surf towns, like towns that are near the ocean, are chill. Mm-hmm. You get humbled by that. Mm-hmm. You take yourself seriously. Look at that fucking body of water over there, stupid.
Yeah,
you ain't shit.
People say, well, what makes the SEAL team so good? In one of the major components is the ocean. Yeah. Because when you've got to do an operation that involves the water, it just sucks. Everything about it sucks. Everything about it sucks. You're getting you're parachuting from a plane into the water. It's nighttime. You got there's freaking parachute drifting around. You got to get your motor started. It's freezing cold. Boats flip over. Then you got to drive that boat to the beach and you got to drive through the surf zone. Your weapons are covered with sand. You're freezing cold. It's just everything sucks. Everything sucks about it. So when that's kind of your starting, and by the way, you haven't even conducted your operation yet. You haven't even started the operation and you're freezing cold, you're tired, your radio got flooded out, your night vision goggles are freaking filled with sand, everything sucks. And now you got to conduct your operation. So in order to survive that way on a regular basis, that's one of the things that makes the SEAL teams good is we're used to this one additional component all the time. That you always have to deal with. You have to figure that out. You have to be able to gut through it. That's why in basic SEAL training, they just put you in the water for a long time. They just put you in there.
We have to develop an attitude that embraces the suck.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For sure.
You actually enjoy it in some way, some crazy way that it sucks. Like that video that I always quote, your video good. Dude, I listen to that in my head all the time. And I've watched the video a ton of times and listened to it. I've played it on this podcast at least 4 times. But I hear it when I'm training. If I'm running hills and I'm fucking exhausted and there's another 100 yards to get to the top of that hill, I hear good. Good. You exhausted? It means you're fucking doing it.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Suck it up.
What's your choice? What else are you going to think about?
Cry.
You know, cry, curl up in a ball.
Want to
Can't do
quit.
it. No, it's like, no, actually good. Bring it. Let's
Good.
make this happen.
Yeah. And if you can do that, I also do that in the sauna. When I'm exhausted in the sauna and it's like 190 degrees and I'm 19 minutes in and, I'm doing a 30-minute session, I'm like, good. Sucks. It means it's going to have a great effect on your body. You're going to get that hormetic effect. This is how you get the heat shock proteins, pussy.
Yep.
Hang in there. Good.
It's if you want to do something that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's gonna suck.
Yeah.
It's just gonna suck, and you might as well just enjoy that part of it.
Yes. Yeah. I mock myself too. That's the other thing I do.
Oh, you make fun of yourself.
Oh, all the time. Yeah.
I get pissed at that little part of my brain. I'll be like, oh, really? You think I'm gonna listen to you?
Yeah.
Not happening. I put these things into kids' books. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Put those things. Those kids' books. Like there's one of the kids' books talks about this hill, horrible hill. Like this is what you're gonna face, horrible hill. And what are you gonna do? You know it's gonna suck. You just got to do it.
Yeah, you just do it. But the thing is, it's always sucks while it's happening. It's always fucking horrible. But then when it's over, it feels great that you got through the suck. And I don't think most people who don't experience suck, they don't experience that feeling of conquering suck.
Yeah, and that's the important thing to try and remember.
Yeah.
Right? So you remember it. I remember it. I remember what that. So even when it's sucking, I'm like, I know how this is going to feel. I know how this plays out.
Ends.
And you know what? Actually, I know. Other feeling, is when you don't do it.
Yeah.
And the end of the day comes, you're like, dude, that was pathetic. You didn't even, and that's just the worst feeling. That's the feeling that really makes you sick. And so between that carrot and stick, carrot being like, I know this is going to be good, and stick meaning, I know at the end of the day, if I'm putting my head on the pillow and I was a bitch, that doesn't feel good. I don't want none of that.
It's the worst feeling of all time.
It's
being
horrible.
disappointed in yourself. Like it's also when you're a type of person that wants to achieve, and so you're always trying to get things done. You're always trying to push yourself. When you fall short because of cowardice or because it is the worst feeling, or just failure, any kind of failure. The reason why one of the reasons why, at least I can speak for myself personally, I do things so hard is because I've felt that sting of failure. You need to know what that feels like, especially when you quit. You need to know what quit. Yeah, see, that's it. You need to know in your own, and you need to hear that fucking sting, feel that sting, so that when it comes up again, you're like, not today, bitch.
No.
Not today. I've been here before. Keep going. Find a way. But there's something about good. Like just even saying it makes me smile. It really does. It works. It really does work because it's an attitude changer. And I use the sauna. Sauna's really easy. Mm-hmm. It's not that bad. It's just fucking 30 minutes. You just deal with it. But there's something about those last 11 minutes that you can get in your head like, fuck, I'll probably get the good effect if I just leave now. There's like all these little mind games you play. But if you just say, good. Oh, does it suck? Good. Yeah. I start smiling.
You can rationalize a lot of that. You can start rationalizing of why. Well, these last 4 minutes won't really make that big of a difference.
A shift in perception. And I always notice that from listening to music when I run. Like, there's something about listening to a great fucking song when a great song kicks on when you're running. Like, if I'm running and Ted Nugent's Stranglehold comes on, there's something about Stranglehold because it also has like a double meaning, right? It's jujitsu. It's fucking, you're like this. So when you hear that, here I come again now, baby, I can run. I get extra energy. I'm like, where the fuck is that energy coming from? Yeah. Well, it's coming from my mind, right? The music stimulates my mind. It kicks in those endorphins. And then all of a sudden I got an extra gear. Yeah. Well, how come I can't just conjure up that fucking extra gear? I think you can.
You can.
You got to figure out how to do that all the time.
Yeah, that always is horrible to see. Like in a fight, when a guy either he loses a fight, and after he loses the fight, he's raging, he's all mad, but he was just gassed.
Right.
He was just gassed.
Right.
Where was that?
Where was it?
Where was that? Right there?
Yeah.
2.5 minutes ago.
Yeah, sometimes it's just overcoming anxiety for fighters. Sometimes it's just when it's over and the plug is pulled, it's over. And they're like, fuck!
Yeah.
And then they're angry and raging because they realize they failed. They didn't manage their energy correctly. They didn't manage their mind, their anxiety. Yeah, exactly. That same feeling of fucking loser. Fucking, I'm a loser. Ugh. I'm so hard on myself, man. Everything I've ever done wrong, everything I've ever said wrong, just everything. Just I'll be in the middle of working out sometimes and I'll think about it and go, fuck. But that is also
that's
hard
what makes
on
you work.
myself. Yeah. And that keeps you going. That makes you achieve. It's like people think that it's easy to just kind of go out there and get things done, but it's not. That's why most people don't do it.
Yeah, so I don't sleep a lot, right? And sometimes people are like, and look, I'm not saying you shouldn't sleep a lot. Everyone should sleep as much as they can. I don't sleep a lot. People are like, hey, why don't you sleep more? And I'm like, bro, I wish I could. Like, I wish there wasn't this little thing in the back of my head going, hey, you're actually, you could be doing a lot more right now. What about this? What about that? What about the other thing? Like, that's what's going on in my head.
Yeah.
There's not something that's going, gee, I have to get up. Like, no, there's a thing in there going, you better get up. You better get up. They're tracking on you. They're watching you. You better get up. It's happening. There's a bad guy out there. He's training harder. Like, that's what's in my head. It's not in my head like, oh, no. No. Hey, please. Let the freaking powers of the world allow me to go into bed at night and just pass out and be like, oh, I'm good. I'm satisfied with my life right now. I wish I could feel that for freaking 8 hours a night. It ain't there. It ain't there. It's like, oh, people talk about staying hungry. I'm freaking starving. I'm starving.
All the time. All the time. Like, stay hungry.
Yeah. You have to
Yeah. I know. It never ends.
It doesn't end. That's the thing. And as soon as I get somewhere, I'm like, oh, where else? Well, I need to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Now I'm worried about getting soft.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always. No matter what I've ever done, I was like, well, one day there'll be a thing where I'll be satisfied and calm. No. With everything that's good that comes, now there's an equal fear of becoming a pussy. There's a fear of now becoming lazy and becoming like second rate and just like, God damn it. There's no end.
Yeah.
So now I don't even think there's an end.
No, there's definitely not
no
an end. That's what's funny about shooting the bow, right? Is what I find funny about shooting the bow is anger, aggression really doesn't help you.
At all.
At all.
You know what? It fucks you up hunting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because anger and aggression is all fast twitch shit too. It's all movement. Whereas the bow is like, you got to have the mind of no mind. Mm-hmm. You got to just execute and just stay completely focused on the task.
Totally detached from what's happening.
Yeah.
And you just got to sit there and
it's a new skill, really.
Oh, it's totally new skill.
And for me, like in the competition that I experienced, the only competition I had other than inside the gym, training partners, is fighting, and that's all fast stuff. It's all like explosions and movement. Mm-hmm. So anytime where there's danger and anxiety and fear, your body's geared up to go quick and move quick. But with hunting, it's the opposite. Yeah. When you're drawing back on an animal, all that anxiety, like, you better get that quick out of your head.
Yeah.
There's no quick. There's execute and calmness. Yeah. Stay in the zone. Nothing exists other than the process of executing the perfect shot.
It's the same thing with shooting. You draw fast, you move fast, you draw fast, and then as soon as you punch out that weapon, you gotta go boom, and you just gotta let that thing go.
Yes.
You used to see guys, myself included, like you ever shot head plates before?
Yes.
And there's 6 head plates. Mm-hmm. You'd see me or someone else, they miss one, and if they don't let that go,
right,
then everything falls apart.
The wheels fall off.
If they miss one and then they try and shoot, usually I would just miss one and just keep shooting like it didn't even happen, and maybe go back and get it, or you kind of have to go back and get it. But if you go, oh God, how did I miss that? Yeah. Oh, it's just a total and complete and utter disaster.
There's a great video that Tim Kennedy put up of him shooting on the range, and he puts dummy rounds in with his regular rounds, and he hits the dummy round and click, and he's like, look at that trigger control. Like, trigger discipline, because there was no flinch, there was no nothing, it was just click, there was no movement. It was perfect, which is what you're trying to achieve.
What you're trying to achieve.
You're trying, the last thing you want to see is click. These are some weird fucking. Remember when I first started shooting rifles? Like that's what I would experience, that thing where you're anticipating the right, 30 Win Mag. 300 Win Mag, so it's got a lot of kick to it. It's a boom. It's like a loud kicking gun. So there was no round in the chamber, and I pulled it, and I saw myself doing them. Like, you bitch, like you better learn how to stop doing that. One thing that's interesting is learning how to shoot a bow radically increased my accuracy with a rifle.
Oh, yeah.
Radically.
Yeah.
Because it's so still. There's so much stillness, and everything's freehand, right? You're very rarely shooting a rifle at an animal freehand. You're usually trying to find a rest, unless it's like inside of, 60, 70 yards. You're probably going to try to rest. You're not going to shoot a 300-yard shot with a rifle freehand. But with a bow, everything's freehand. So with a rifle, I just knew that all it was just squeeze, 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 let it go off.
Yeah.
Just let it go off. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Boom. Like when I started shooting at Terran Tactical and shooting on the range, the easiest thing for me was a rifle. I was like, oh, God, all I have to do is just squeeze and the trigger will go off. I'm so used to a bow where there's so many moving parts and you're using your back and you're letting it go off a surprise shot. It made a big difference in my rifle accuracy.
Yeah, that was when Dudley was teaching me how to shoot, and Andy was there too. So Andy was like translating for me. He's like, hey, what he means, he's translating it to SEAL, like pistol shooting, and they're kind of like communicating to each other, and then Andy said, hey, what he's saying is like, front sight focus. I was like, okay, cool, got it, and it was awesome to have freaking Dudley.
I know.
The first person that ever shows me anything about archery is Dudley saying, hey, here's a bow and here's exactly how to shoot, you idiot. And I'm like, thank you.
That's pretty goddamn lucky. Yeah, I mean, we're both real lucky in that regard. I learned how to bow hunt from Cam Haynes and John Dudley. Like, Jesus. It's pretty lucky.
Those are like the world champions.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
That's Jordan and Kobe Bryant, or Jordan and LeBron James.
Completely.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's we're very fortunate, and it's there's something about hunting too that it seems like when you're looking at it on the surface, it seems so straightforward, and then once you start doing it, it's very much like martial arts. Where you're like, God damn, there's a lot of layers to this shit. There's so many layers, And then when you're hanging out with a guy like Cam or a guy like Dudley and you hunt with them and you see them hunt, you go, oh, like I get it. This is a black belt.
Oh, yeah.
This is some Mundial's champion here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
So crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy to see those guys in action. And just to be like listening to what Dudley's telling me about what a freaking elk is gonna do.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna come over here.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I guess that's just about to happen. Oh, and it just happened.
Yeah. Man, it's madness. And then with Dudley too, it's like he's so into cooking it too. He's so good at cooking. It's like you get the whole lifestyle thing from him. You get like this learning how the art of archery, which really is an art form. It's an art form just like martial arts are. And then this moment of keeping your shit together in the execution of a shot, and then the big payoff when that does happen, and then the harvesting the animal, carrying it out, and then the meal. That meal afterwards when you've had a successful hunting trip. It's like, God damn, when we were in camp in Utah and Dudley made that neck roast with jalapenos and the bell peppers, and holy shit, that was good. But it was also so good because you knew what went down. Yeah. You were there when he shot the elk, and it's all so crazy. It's so satisfying that I can't imagine it not being a part of my life and that meat not being a part of my diet. Just changes you.
Yeah. So it's too bad that it's not more available to people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not.
It's hard.
There's a high bar for accessibility. It's very and we got real lucky.
Oh, for sure.
We get to hunt at the Deseret Ranch in Utah, which is this incredible place. It's a private property. I mean, it's all wild animals. There's no fences, but it's private property. So there's not an overwhelming number of people. Like there's a lot of guys that they try to go on public land, and unless you're willing to hike in 20 miles, and there's a lot of guys that are willing now to hike in 20 miles because there's now this culture of these really fit backpack hunters, like these Aaron Snyder type dudes who put these fucking heavy packs on and they just go. They're training for this moment all year round. Like Aaron has this crazy setup in his gym where he has this elevated treadmill, and then the treadmill on each side has like an Olympic bar, and you lift the bar so you're holding weight and you're going up this elevated treadmill. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. But that's what you have to do if you want to be mountain fit, to be able to do that. And that's the barrier for entry. To go and do these public land hunts, everybody stops at the trailhead. Everybody gets out of their car. And then how far are you going to go? Because he's willing to go 20 fucking miles in. Are you willing to go 20 miles in?
Yeah.
That's going to take 8 hours.
And then come 20 miles back out.
With a moose on your back.
A freaking moose on your back. That's totally legit. Yeah. Totally legit.
That's as legit as it gets. Yeah. And most of those guys all had to learn themselves. They all had to teach themselves. And, they've all, we're real lucky that, like, we get this amazing coaching. So we're getting these even though there's so many layers to it, and we're both I've been doing it now. I've been hunting for 8 years, bow hunting for, I guess, 6-ish. Total rookie. I'm still like a blue belt, or maybe I'm like getting ready to be a purple belt. Maybe I might get my purple belt soon. But, you go out with those guys, they're fucking 10th degree black belts. And it's like even though there's, this barrier for entry, it is still possible. It's still possible. But it's just like jiu-jitsu. It's like when you're talking to that blue belt, you're like, keep fucking going. Yeah. And you can make it. You can do this.
Speaking of which, I have to at least bring this up a little bit to clarify a little bit what I did to John Dudley on the jiu-jitsu mats.
You broke his neck. You broke his fucking neck. What do you mean what you did?
Here's the only part that you're missing a little bit, right? So I'm giving him, his wife, like a jiu-jitsu private.
So you broke his neck in front of his wife.
Andy's there. Little Dud was there. So it was
getting worse. You broke his neck in front of his wife and his son.
So I'm just completely, I'm chilling and like, hey, this is that. And I'm not even doing, like, this is in one weekend, Andy, John, and me, we did archery, which I had never done before. Then we did jiu-jitsu, which John had never done before. And then we went on the wind tunnel, which John had never done before. Because Andy's like a sky god, parachuting, blah, blah, blah. And so we did those 3 things. It was kind of like a cool weekend. I mean, that's kind of an epic weekend, really.
Pretty epic.
Let's be honest. So it's jiu-jitsu time. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm going over, hey, this is the guard, this is the mount. I'm going over all the basic stuff. I'm just giving the basic overall kind of concepts. So I get done with that, and I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm just done. I'm like, okay, great. It's a good introduction. And then Dudley is like, well, let's go a little bit. And I'm like,
that was the wrong language. I would have pulled him aside. Come here.
So he's like, let's go a little bit. And even that, you know what? I'm totally cool with that. Of course, he wasn't. He wasn't mean, and he wasn't thinking he was going to be. It wasn't. He
wants the experience.
Yeah, I shouldn't have even said let's go a little bit. He was like, hey, can we try it? Something like that. Just being cool. And I'm like, absolutely, man, no problem. So I lay down on the ground, right? And I'm like, he says, well, what should I do? I go, just attack me. So I lay down on my back. I'm like, just attack me. And guess what he did?
What'd he do?
He freaking attacked me. He came at me. And Dudley's a big, strong, athletic guy. He's 6'5"? At
least.
Yeah. So he grabs, and I'm chilling. I'm just like, okay, cool. He comes at me. I think he grabbed me. And so I kind of replace guard, and then I sweep him. And so I'm mounted, and all this is just pretty chill. And I put in a Ezekiel choke, right? Which I have a
Nogi?
Nogi Ezekiel choke. I have a little good technique for doing it, but no big deal. So I put in the Ezekiel choke. This is the thing that I really wish I should have explained more, because we hadn't rolled. I wasn't like, hey, when you start to feel like you got to tap out, right? He knew to tap out, but I kind of figured everyone knows how to tap out. So I put the choke in on him, right? Well, he doesn't know what to do. So he's grabbing me and he's squeezing me So he's on the bottom. I'm mounted. I've got the Ezekiel choke in. And in order to defend himself in his own mind, he's squeezing me into him. Which the way I do my Ezekiel choke, it hurts. I mean, it compresses the choke even more. And so
what are you doing specifically?
Basically, I make a fist, and I put my fist in my sternum. And then I, grab the forearm here and then arch my shoulders. So there's the neck right here. It closes it, right? So
you're putting the fist into the
fist into right. It's a trach. It's an air choke. It's gnarly.
Okay.
And so I'm just doing this, and you can see that whole, and you shrug. But as I'm doing this, he's panicking and pulling me into him.
Oh Jesus!
And he only did it for a second, and then he taps out. And I was like, and I was just like, boom, and then he taps. And then the rest of the story is, I guess I didn't know a lot about the rest of the story. I didn't know any of the rest of the story. Because he didn't want to feel like a baby. Yeah, it fractured like his hyoid bone, and then it built calcium up around it. So he calls up Andy one day, and he goes, dude, I think I got throat cancer. Because there's something growing in my throat. And he goes, the doctor gets an x-ray, and he's like, hey, did you do something to your neck? Because there's a hairline fracture that's not now calcium deposit around it. And he's like, oh, I know what happened. So I guess in my defense.
Why didn't you just get him in like a head and arm choke or something?
It wasn't that. It wasn't like a big deal. It wasn't. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't crazy. It was just normal. It'd be like if you grabbed somebody that showed up here is like, hey, hey, can you roll with me? You'd be like, oh, cool. And you'd put them in a kind of whatever presented itself. Mm-hmm. Maybe you'd arm lock them. Maybe you'd do a Kimura.
The problem is when you get used to doing certain types of chokes and then you're doing it to someone who doesn't, especially that where you got a fist in the neck.
And I guess this is the only thing. Make no mistake about it. Even though I was just chilling,
he was not.
He was going level 7 berserker mode on me. And he's such a good athlete, The
other thing about people that have never done jiu-jitsu, when they're doing it with someone who's a black belt, is they probably feel like they can just kind of go crazy and you'll just absorb it and deal with it. And so they just try it. Let's see what happens when I go crazy.
So now he holds this over my head.
He broke his neck in front of his wife and kid.
I know. One day I'm like, we were up in Montana. And I said, hey, man, he was at my house. He's like, oh, thanks for having us over. I go, bro, you taught me how to do this. You brought me up here. You take me hunting. Like, you're doing all this awesome stuff, man. You're the man, dude. I really appreciate it. He goes, yeah. And you know what you did for me? I'm like, what? He goes, broke my neck. It's awful, bro.
It's all good now, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not bothering him anymore?
I don't know about that. I thought you meant it's all good between us. It's all good between us. He just sent me a new bow. We're freaking
I think every time he swallows, he thinks about you.
No, he coughs.
Oh, no.
He coughs. Hopefully, I haven't talked to him about it. I don't like to bring it up a lot. But
so there's something in there that's fucking with his throat.
Something in there is making him cough.
So they'd have to probably get in there and scrape it.
So while we're hunting, he would be like... And then he'd look at me.
Oh no!
And I'm just thinking, oh, I'm such a horrible person.
Oh no!
It's, I always say like, Dean Lister. I've been Dean Lister's training partner for 20 something years. Up until recently, he never hurt me, and I never hurt him. Never.
Until recently?
Yeah, because he ended up hurting me, and he ended up hurting me in the dumbest possible way. I show up to class. This was like. This is over a year ago because it hurt my archery for a while. I show up to class late, right? And he's teaching and we're just going to roll, but I come out and he's like finishing the class. And I'm cold and I'm just getting on the mat. And he says, oh, let me show something. He goes, here, lay down. And he gets a straight, he gets an Americana on me or a Kimura. But anyways, he's like, hey, try and get out by straightening your arm. And the whole class is watching. He goes, try and get out by straightening your arm. And I go, okay, cool. And so he puts me across. He gets across side. He puts I think it was actually a Kimura. He says, all right, now try. And this is in front of the class. He goes,
so he's like straight arm Kimura.
He's about to straight. My arm is here, and he's about to straight. He wants me to try and get out by like doing almost like a hitchhiker escape or something. So he says, try and get out by straightening your arm. I go, okay. I straighten my arm, and he just in a millisecond, and you could hear it. Arm locks me. totally destroyed my arm. No, not totally. It was injured very bad. The first time in my life I had to get a sling. This guy comes over to me, Dean Lister, and he goes, bro, and he's such a nice guy. He's all, bro, I'm so sorry. And he goes, I didn't know your elbow wasn't very flexible. I go, bro, it's an elbow. Elbows aren't flexible. They're bone, dude.
I didn't know your elbow wasn't flexible. Dean needs a DNA test because I know he's at least 86% Neanderthal.
Yeah, at a minimum.
The way his neck and his shoulders move together, like
At a minimum.
you could see that dude with like a big club.
For sure. And a total mutant and a savant on the jiu-jitsu mats.
Oh, yeah.
A complete savant on the jiu-jitsu mats.
Well, he's literally the missing link. He's the link. I shouldn't say the missing link. The link to jiu-jitsu, expanding it to the leg lock game.
Modern jiu-jitsu.
It's 100% Dean Lister.
100%.
And the statement that he made to John Danaher has become world famous because Danaher said it on my podcast. He said, Dean Lister said to him, why would you ignore 50% of the human body?
Yep.
And Danaher, being the fucking genius that he is, was like, why would you enjoy it? Why would you?
So
why would you ignore it?
most of the, all these new things that are coming out now, right?
Yeah.
You see Gordon Ryan, just insane. All these guys that are really attacking legs now. And by the way, just like Dean, Gordon's not only good at attacking legs, he's good at everything. But I was asking Dean, because I watch, Dean's done all these moves to me for years, and just over and over again, right? This is what we do. This is what we've been doing. We've been doing it since he won ADCC. When Eddie beat Hoyler, when Dean won, when he beat Kakareko in the finals with what they now call 50-50, which he and I called Kakareko. After that, we called that Kakareko. No one started doing it for another many years, probably 10 years, regularly.
I was there that year.
Oh yeah, and I wasn't there that year. I was there when Eddie won in San Diego. I competed in San Diego, Dean competed in San Diego, and Eddie competed in San Diego for the trials.
I was there for that too.
Eddie won.
Yeah.
Dean won. I lost to Big Country, Roy Nelson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I did because I wasn't very tactically smart. I scrambled to a position and I tried to get as a matter of fact, I got a crucifix because that was kind of one of my go-to moves, get a crucifix and I'd get a choke from there. When I should have taken the back and gotten points, and I didn't, and Roy Nelson, who is a great guy and he's a total stud, I got the crucifix position and he powered out of bounds. And so then, and he beat me because he's a much better wrestler than me and awesome at jiu-jitsu too. Anyways, when he won that, we were doing this stuff. So anyways, right, probably 6 months ago or 3 months ago, I was asking Dina, I said, hey, Dina, are you starting to see things that you didn't know? Right? When you're watching, because he watches, I said, are you starting to see jiu-jitsu things that you didn't know, like footlock stuff? And he's like, yeah, about 3 or 4 months ago, I started seeing some things that I didn't think of. So that's how long it took people to get to and then start to develop their own stuff, which is pretty crazy.
Well, it's fascinating that once the game moved into this sort of leg lock heavy style, that so many guys like Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan and this, Gary Tonin, there's so many of those guys that you're seeing this game getting tighter and tighter with leg locks.
Yeah.
And the way John Danaher examines everything too, because Danaher's body is broken. He can't really compete anymore.
Yep.
I mean, he has an artificial hip. He's got an artificial knee. His body's really fucked up. And his other knee is really unstable. So he can roll, but he can only roll very controlled with guys who understand his physical limitations. And then you can see how he understands positions. You can get a lot out of rolling with him. There's a great video, actually, of Gordon Ryan rolling with John Danaher. And obviously, they're not using strength. They're just flow rolling. But you see how tactical he is and how ahead of every position he is and how his deep understanding of it. And part of it is because he's teaching these guys and he's teaching them from a position where he can't really do it himself. He can do it, but he can't compete.
He can't roll.
Right.
It.
But he has the mind for it. So he's seeing it from the outside. And he's also this fucking really genius human being.
Yeah.
So he's able to break this down, and then he has this core group of badasses that understand what a great pleasure it is to have this genius teach you. I mean, it's not a coincidence that that whole Renzo Gracie team has become one of the biggest threats. Like that, the whole team is filled with fucking murderers.
Yeah, and they're, just to again emphasize the point, is leg locks are a part of the game. And there was a time period where people thought that leg locks would change the game completely. And at a certain point, the defenses for the leg locks become known. And all of a sudden, you have to go back to the other parts of jiu-jitsu. And that's why you see guys like Tonin, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't always win with heel hooks, but you have to address them or you will lose.
Right.
And yeah, those guys, it's really cool to see those guys coming up. I mean,
it's such
I don't know why I'm kind of saying it coming up like I'm like there, but I'm watching this development come, which I was at kind of ground zero with Dean Lister. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing is, Dean Lister, he has like a crazy savant mind where I would create one thing for every 20 things that Dean created. It's probably like Eddie, and I don't know Eddie as well as you do, but just the creative part of his brain is what the most powerful thing was.
Yeah.
And then once people saw it, they're like, okay, now we can build upon this.
Yeah, for Eddie, it's 100% the creative part of his brain. Also the fact that when I met Eddie, he hated lifting weights. He wouldn't lift weights. Because I would try to get him to lift weights. I'm like, come on, let's lift weights. Like, I'm not fucking lifting shit. Like, you can go lift weights. So he was this little tiny guy, and he had to rely on technique. Yeah. So he had to rely on trickery. Plus, he was a musician, right? So he's always this creative guy, and he smoked a lot of weed, too. So he's always thinking about things outside the box.
Oh, yeah.
And he's also this guy that doesn't like people telling him that he's wrong. So, like, you know, like, you can't do it that way. He's like, oh, really? Let's see if I can. And then he would find a way to do it. And, you know, and he just developed all these, like, weird entries into things and these weird setups that people didn't see coming. And once he sort of improved upon these and then started expanding upon them and then developing that whole 10th Planet system, I mean, really, it's an insanely creative system that's just developed based on his ability to just think outside the box.
Mm-hmm. I had Jeff Glover at my training at my gym for a long time, teaching
he's another
at my
one.
gym. He's the same thing where he's small, he's crazy flexible. Mm-hmm. He smokes a lot of weed, and like he would just do wild things. I was actually at ADCC, and I was with my son. My son was probably like 9 or something, and we're there watching. And Jeff Glover's about to compete. This was before I really was friends with Jeff.
Was he doing that donkey guard thing back then?
He was doing everything. The donkey guard hadn't become super popular, but he was kind of in the beginning stages of it. So I'm sitting there next to my son, and we're at ADCC, so it's a small thing. You know, I said to my son, you know, I go, hey, watch this guy that's about to come out. He's crazy. And Glover comes out, and he falls on his back, flips inverted guard, and starts like just going insane, just doing insane things. And, you know, the rest of the matches are two guys, you know, playing patty cakes and looking for the takedown. Glover comes out, falls down, freaking just doing all kinds of wild stuff, and then submits the dude in 38 seconds. And my son looks at me and he goes, I thought you meant like crazy. And he goes, I didn't know you meant crazy. And I go, yes.
He thought you meant like brutish.
Yes, brutish,
like
crazy. He didn't think I meant
just weirdly creative.
What that weird creative thing is.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about learning jiu-jitsu from a small person. Like those small guys,
100%.
They figure out how to get around things. I mean, there's been a bunch of, you know, Hoyler Gracie's a great example of it too. Eddie, Glover, yeah.
That's why I'm that's why I'm a bad person to introduce people to jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Because they just think, oh yeah, of course you're a gorilla. Yeah. You know, you outweigh me by 40 or 50 pounds.
Yeah.
I used to always have Jeff Glover on standby at my gym and be like, oh, you don't, oh yeah, okay, go train with that guy over there. See what happens. And when Jeff goes against a big, strong guy, he's going to get some.
Yeah, they really get so disappointed in themselves. It's so sad.
He said the easiest people for him to roll with were big, like, muscular guys.
Really?
He says the easiest people for him to roll with are big, muscular guys. Like, big, muscular guys. He says, oh, I love rolling with them. They're so easy.
That's so crazy because most people get injured rolling with, like,
That
Glover's
guy's so
rarely
freaking
injured.
flexible.
Yeah.
I think his I think his neck's jacked up now.
Oh, is it now?
Yeah.
That's a thing that gets everybody is the goddamn neck. The neck, because very few guys really strengthen their neck correctly either. I think the neck is one thing that you absolutely should strengthen. I think you can get away with not lifting weights and doing jiu-jitsu, but I don't think you can get away with not strengthening your neck for very long.
Yeah, that's it's one of those things, and it connects you to the rest of your freaking body.
You also use it. You use it more than you think. Especially me. I was my favorite technique is probably head and arm choke. And you're using your neck to secure that arm. And once you develop a feel for holding that arm in place with that neck gets a workout, man. You use it a lot more than you think. And if you can strengthen your neck, it's such a big advantage. It's also a big advantage in avoiding getting hurt because it strengthens the whole chain from the top of your spine all the way down. That's why I'm such a big fan of that iron neck. I just used it right now, right before the podcast. I was doing it. I do it every fucking day, man. I put that halo on. And,
I bought one.
Love it.
They emailed me a bunch. They're like, bro, how do you like it? I'm like, it's all good.
It's fucking awesome, man. Between that and, there's a few other back exercises and stuff that I think are critical. Strengthen the lower back, too, because it's another thing that guys always get jacked is their lower back.
Yeah. The weird thing is people's necks get jacked up regardless. Like there's people that go through life doing whatever paperwork and they end up with a bad neck.
Yeah.
Neck is a vulnerable thing. So if you don't take care of it, especially when you are abusing it, when you are getting choked, when you are not tapping, it's one of those things. That
I judge people on their necks.
On the size of their neck?
Yeah, if I see someone with a little skinny neck, I just go, what are you doing, man?
Yeah. Go do some bridges.
Good. It just doesn't seem like it would be a good thing to have. That's the thing that holds your head on.
I can't wait for the future when your neck is all jacked up and you go in and they just put you in surgery for 2 hours and you come out, you got a metal spine.
You think that's what's going to happen?
Oh yeah, I'm going to be the first person. I'm right in line. You want to give me a metal spine or any metal components inside my body?
You're down with that?
I'm 100% down. Let's make it happen.
Eddie's got a fake disc. Eddie's got a titanium articulating disc.
Where?
Lower back. His lower back had been so smashed and suppressed that that's one of the things. That's why men, when they get older, they shrink. Is your discs get squished to the point and they start touching. You get stenosis.
Do you think you can go too far with flexibility that it starts to injure you over the long term?
Well, I don't think you can go too far with flexibility, but flexibility without strength, perhaps, because maybe that inflexibility, like maybe you'll get like some muscle damage, when you're trying to push too far, and that'll prevent you from getting disc damage. Maybe. That's just speculation. But I think it's just so critical to strengthen your back, man. I mean, I'm always doing reverse hypers, and I do all these different back extensions. I just think strengthening that whole column, and yoga in particular, and then the neck, the iron neck, I just think that whole thing, it's like too many guys just rely on their workouts to strengthen that, and they don't take it as like, hey, I really like doing jiu-jitsu, I really like doing Muay Thai, I want to put in the time to work out these areas.
How's Eddie's back now?
It's not 100%. It still fucks with him a little bit, but he's rolling again. But he's got a fake disc, a disc. It's a titanium disc that they replace the smushy part with this thing that rolls and moves. But it still creates some inflammation. I know I had Ronnie Coleman here last week.
I know, I listened to it.
And his whole back is all fused. And it's horrible, man. I mean, he can't walk. And, he's the king. Greatest Olympian of all time. I mean, he's a fucking amazing pro bodybuilder. 8-time Mr. Olympia.
I watched the documentary.
Yeah.
Did you see the documentary with him?
I didn't.
Really good, man. Really just, what a good guy.
Great guy.
What a nice guy.
Couldn't be nicer. And in pain, in fucking agony, and just
still working
friendly, and wouldn't have it any other way. And he talks about the days that he was talking about squatting 800 pounds, and that he said he was going to do it for 2 reps, and after the 2 reps, he said, I could have gotten more. And to this day, he thinks he should have got more.
That's what we were talking about earlier, right? That's keeping him up at night.
That's why he's a champion. I mean, that really is. That's what made him a champion.
Did you watch the West Side versus the World documentary?
No, I didn't.
With Louis Simmons?
I got to interview Louis.
Oh,
That's why I got
listened to that one too.
reverse hyper out here. I have another piece of his equipment too, that belt squat machine, which is amazing. It puts all the weight on your hips versus on your back. He's a fucking wild dude, man.
I want to go out there and hang out.
Oh, he would love you, man. He would love you.
Yeah.
You would love him too, man. That is who Louis is, and he's got this fucking gym filled with barbarians.
Oh yeah.
Just all they're doing is just trying to lift the maximum amount of weight they can lift.
It's insane. my kid watched that, and he, I think he's just all about it now.
Right.
West Side. Him and his little buddies talking about Louis Simmons.
He's contagious.
Go harder, go heavier.
I mean, Jamie and I were in his office interviewing him. But that's where we did it. We actually
you went out
did
there?
the podcast at Westside. Yeah, I was in Columbus doing stand-up, and I had to interview him.
That's awesome.
I just knew. I knew just like I want to get the guy in his gym too. It was just fucking amazing. He gave us a tour of the gym, and then we did a podcast at his desk. It was awesome.
What a rare human being.
Yeah, they don't make him like Louis Simmons, but also a genius. Like, here's a guy who figured out, like, his disc was fucked up, and they were like, we're going to fuse you. And he's like, well, let me think of this. Something made it compress. I'm going to figure out something to make it decompress and strengthen that area, and that's where the reverse hyper came from, which I think should be a staple in every gym. That reverse hyper machine for strengthening the lower back and then actively decompressing, I've never found anything better. And that's all in Louis Simmons' mind. It came out of his own brain because of his injury.
That he came back from after.
Yes. Wizard.
And was squatting whatever, 729 world record at whatever, 62 years old.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend any things he does. I mean, here's a guy who got his biceps reattached and then blew it out because it was too annoying to not be able to work out. So he just went back to working out and pop, snap back off. No, they all cold. So he's got no biceps.
Yeah.
Just pulls back. Crazy animal. He got his shoulder redone. They gave him an artificial shoulder. Goes back to the gym, and they're like, you're going to max out today. His friends made him max out after his shoulder surgery with an artificial shoulder. Like, okay. Like, that's just the culture.
Yeah.
The culture is, it doesn't matter.
Well,
Injuries don't matter.
In the documentary, one of the guys was saying, my goal was to hurt Louis when he came in the gym. My goal was to hurt him. I wanted him to get hurt. I wanted to push him so hard that he got hurt. And this is one of his buddies, one of his friends, one of his training partners. My goal was to hurt him.
That's that culture, though. Yeah. I mean, that's how you develop such a legendary place. You have to have the sensibilities are beyond what a normal person would consider a prudent thing to do.
Yeah, and if the people that could withstand that kind of pressure became champions, became world record holders.
It's all about the mind, Jocko.
That's what it
Nobody
takes.
knows more than you. We just did 3 hours, dude. I'm going to give you a COVID test now. It's 3:30.
Let's get some.
All right, let's get some. Thank you, brother.
Right
Appreciate
on,
you,
bro.
man.
Right on.
Bye, everybody. Awesome.